Welcome to r/Am I the Jerk, where Karen demands a paid-for trip to Disney. Am I the jerk for telling my wife that my family doesn't owe us a Disney trip? My wife and I have two awesome kids who are 4 and 2, and my wife is a mega Disney adult. The kids have been one time, but we don't have a ton of disposable income. I do well, but we live in a high cost of living area and we have some debt. My family goes to Disney all the time. These trips are mostly planned by my aunt and paid for by my aunt or my mom. They both still pay for all of their grown kids' travel expenses. Before having kids, we were invited and my mom always paid, but since having kids, they stopped including us. My mom has said going to Disney with little kids is miserable and no one else in the group has kids, so it would be awkward. My wife gets very offended by this as she feels the kids are being treated poorly. I feel no one owes anyone a trip, and it's nice that she used to take us. I get that kids aren't for everyone, and it seems fair that a bunch of adults wouldn't want kids around. My wife recently saw pictures of my sister's 21st birthday drinking around the world at Epcot and blew up that they were there again without us. She said I need to at least tell my mom how we feel and explained that this is not how a normal grandmother should be acting. I said I wasn't going to do that as no one owes us a trip to Disney. My wife called me a coward and wouldn't hear me out. Save up and go with them when the kids are older and they'll remember it, like 8 to 6 or maybe a bit older. Honestly, if your wife plays it cool, grandma will probably invite the kids and pay when they're older. 2 and 4-year-olds are a lot to deal with, especially if the rest of the group are adults. I could see that changing when the kids are over 8 or 9, if you don't mess it up by following your wife's lead. Not the jerk. If grandma ever finds out about the wife's entitledness, she's never going again. I'd be furious at the audacity. Wifey feels left out. There's all sorts of things we have to give up when we have kids. For wifey, it's the adult trips to Disney. P.S. The really little ones at Disney are a flat-out nightmare. They don't have the stamina or patience, and they don't even understand half of it. Been there, done that. Not the jerk. My husband refuses to count childcare as a family expense, and it's frustrating. We have 2 kids who are 3 and 6. I've been a stay-at-home mom for 6 years. Truth be told, I wish to go back to work now that our oldest is in school and our youngest can be in daycare. I expressed my desire to go back to work, and my husband is against the idea. He thinks having a parent home is valuable and great for the kid. This is how he was raised, while I was raised in a family where both parents had to work. After going back and forth, my husband relented and told me he couldn't stop me, but told me all childcare and work-related expenses would come out of my salary, in which he knows that is messed up because he knows community social workers don't make much. My husband told me he would still cover everything he has, but everything related to my job or my work is on me. I told him we should split the costs equitably, and he told me flat out no. He claimed that because I wish to work, I should be the one that carries the cost. I don't know what to feel or do. Update. Appreciate the feedback. Childcare costs are on the complicated side. My husband has high standards and feels if our kid needs to be in the care of someone, it should be the best possible care. Our oldest is in private school, and he expects the same quality of care for our youngest. My starting salary will be on the low end, like $40K, and my hours would be 9 to 5, but with commute, I'll be gone for like 10 hours. We only have one family car, so we would need to get a second car because my husband probably would handle pickups and I would handle drop-offs. The places my husband likes are on the high end, like $19,000 to $24,000 a year, not counting other expenses associated with daycare. This is not counting potential car costs, increases in insurance and fuel costs, among other things. I get the math side of things, but the reality is we can afford it. My husband could cover the cost and be fine. We already agreed to put our kids in private school from the start, so he's just being a jerk about this entire situation. No, I do not need to work, but being home is not for me either. Yes, I agreed to this originally, but I was wrong. I'm not cut out to be home all the time. End of the day, I want to work, and if that means I make nothing, so be it. I get his concerns about our kids being in daycare or school for nearly 12 hours, but my mental health matters. So, if you start working, you wouldn't be able to pay childcare? Your husband has a point. You're the jerk. What point does he have? It isn't about money to him. He wants her to be at home with the youngest because that's the dynamic that was modeled in his life and he can't imagine his family any other way. He just wants her to pay for it to punish her for having a choice he doesn't agree with. The money he makes for the family is under his absolute discretion, apparently. Pretty shameful behavior for a husband to have. Working isn't just about making money. Working is absolutely about making money, even if your reasons for wanting to make the money are deeper than that. I work to take care of my family and to provide my son a good life and a better future. In order to succeed at the level I wish to provide at, I need to make money. Having a family means being concerned about the overall needs of the family, sometimes in exclusion of your own wants. If her job isn't paying enough to cover the new cost to the family in the form of childcare, then she isn't making the decision based on what the family needs. She's doing it based on her own wants. Wrong. He's the one making the decision based on what he wants, and he's making it for her based on what he wants. He wants a nanny. She doesn't want to be a nanny. She's making the decision based on what the family needs because she is part of the family. And he needs to pay at least 50% of the childcare costs because they are equally his kids. Or he needs to quit his job and stay home with them if he feels that strongly that they need a parent at home. He does not get to dictate to her what her life will be, and she does not have to sacrifice everything she wants just because she's a woman. Blah, 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 blah. You speak, yet you say nothing worth listening to. Demand, demand, demand. You must be insufferable. Imagine being called controlling for wanting your youngest to be with their mother as much as possible during their formative years. Bro, honestly, she has absolutely nothing keeping her, except her own lack of desire to do so, from being a devoted full-time parent to her kids, and instead, she wants to go be a social worker, aka trying to fix everybody else's families, just to break even at best, because she's paying someone else to raise her kids while she does this. Not to mention, she thinks being a social worker will help her with her mental health. Has she met a social worker? Why should he cover all the bills and you work, and I'm sure you'll want more help around the house? What is your pitch to keep things equal? I may have missed that in a follow-up comment. OP, you're right, it would not be equal, but me staying home is not healthy either. Just divorce him. His alimony and child support can pay for those things. Girl, you're in a financially mistreating relationship. Run. Divorcing, breaking up a family, and throwing away a relationship you've worked hard and invested many years into over a disagreement about childcare expenses is literally the most narcissistically insane thing I've ever heard. But it's not over a disagreement of expenses. It's about him using finances to control her. No, he isn't. He's literally telling her to pay one single bill by herself because she created that expense, and he will continue to pay for all of the other bills. Did you even read the post? He's paying all of the bills. He said he will continue to do that except for childcare. Why should he also have to stay home with the kids? You're not making sense. If he's the main breadwinner, how could he stay home? You think a social worker can support a family of 4? Well, who do you agree with? OP or her husband? Please let us know. Am I the jerk for telling my brother he's weird for starting a new family at his age? My younger brother, Danny, his wife left him after their last kid moved out. They had been married for 25 years, since he was 20. She was the only woman he'd ever been with. She had been part of our family for 30 years. They started dating when she was a freshman. I guess after 30 years, she was ready for something new. She said that she was 44 and that she wanted to enjoy her life before it was too late. That was 5 years ago. He's 50 now and his new wife is 30, and they're expecting their first baby. I hope it's their only kid. He's happy to have a partner again, and he would do anything to keep her happy. I was happy for him when he started dating again. It got weird when he met and married a woman who was 20 years younger than him. And now they're having a kid. They had a big gender reveal party, and it's going to be a boy. He's ecstatic. The family is happy for him. His 3 older kids are happy for him. His ex is a little upset, but that might be sour grapes, as her enjoyment of life has run into the roadblock of funding it. She got no child support and lost out on spousal support when she remarried 2 years after the divorce. Danny asked me why I was acting weird. I told him that he's too old to be doing such a dumb thing, that he's 5 years from retirement, and that he will now have a baby that is the same age as his first grandkid. That to have a kid at 50 was super strange. I guess he told his wife, and this has started a huge fight. She doesn't want me around if I'm going to be a judgmental jerk, her words. Most of my family told me I should keep those thoughts to myself. Even his daughter, whose friend he married, told me to butt out. I was only thinking of my brother and this new kid. I talked to Danny again and apologized. I told him that I was only thinking about his future. He said that he is healthy, in great shape physically and financially, and in love. He said that if I can't just be happy for him, it would be best if we didn't hang out so much in the future. So now I'm biting my tongue just so I don't get frozen out, because pretty much everyone is on his side. You're the jerk. In what world is 55 retirement? Also, in what world is 50 near the end of our lives? You're acting like he's old, decrepit, and ready for shady pines. You should absolutely keep your opinions to yourself on other people's lives. There's a reason everyone else is happy for him. They're behaving like adults. Instead of being happy another beautiful life is coming into the world, making your brother happy, you're only thinking of your opinion. Everyone's an adult here. Everyone else seems happy, prepared, and stable enough to handle the situation. The baby's coming either way. You can't stop that. You're basically fighting with the heir at this point. It's good that you apologized, but it would be better for everyone and yourself if you work out your feelings about this matter quietly and on your own time. You're the jerk if you keep bringing doubt and negativity to a situation that is going to happen whether you like it or not. Not the jerk. A lot of people would feel the same as you. You only said how you felt. You didn't actively try to destroy his new marriage. He and the wife got upset, you apologized, and now you're biting your tongue. What more do they want? You can be nice to her and accept the new baby, and inside you can feel how you feel. Your feelings may change. You may come to really like her. Or she might bail once she realizes she's married to an old man and wants to live her life while she's still young, like the first wife. No way to know. Look, everyone agrees with you secretly. It's really creepy, but they know better than to question two adults. You just have to let people mess up their lives and hope they don't do it too badly. Not the jerk for your personal thoughts, but you are the jerk for voicing them. This kid is here and your brother's life is set. I hope he doesn't pass too young on the kiddo, but it is what it is. Am I the jerk for canceling my sister-in-law's engagement photos because her fiance told my brother-in-law he can't stand me? So I, 29 female, am a photographer, and my sister-in-law, who's 21, let's call her Alyssa, and her fiance, Brandon, who's 24, had asked me to take their engagement photos. I initially agreed and I was happy about it. I offered help with styling, scouted locations, and everything. Let me add here that Brandon had always seemed to just be the shy and quiet kid who kept to himself ever since he was introduced to us 2 years ago. I never had a clue he actually hates me and my husband a lot. This isn't the first time I felt a little awkward tension between Brandon and I, but Alyssa let me know that he did like me and I was just overthinking it. This was about a month ago. My brother-in-law, 28, Cole, just called to let me know about his weekend plans, asked to hang, the average conversation. But then was like, oh man, I gotta tell you that Brandon really let it be known that he can't stand you guys at dinner with everyone, and he really thinks you're the most annoying people in the family. Cole had also said that Brandon had mentioned that he was thankful that Cole and their dad were at least normal, unlike the rest of us who annoy the living heck out of him. So basically, the rest of us are trash. I'm highly offended by this. This is the most blindsided I've ever been by someone who is actively seeking something from me for free. I'm not just a freelance photographer, I'm a luxury wedding photographer in a large city. This is my career and also someone who is going to be in my family. Brandon had also said horrible things about my husband while he went on his rant, and I'm having a hard time not making a phone call directly to the source to confront this. I will always defend my own, immediately, but must say I'm conflicted in causing family conflict right before 2 large weddings are about to happen so soon. Part of me feels extremely guilty and sad for Alyssa because I do like her. We've never been extremely sisterly or close, but she's always been sweet, and it really hurts that she was basically right there while Brandon sits, letting everyone know he has such a problem with us just days before this engagement session. I really don't think I could show up on Sunday and play pretend after hearing that I'm so annoying and the worst to be around. Would I be the jerk for canceling this session while also letting her know that I would not have hurt feelings if they didn't want me there at all, as I'm now uncomfortable to be around them? Not the jerk. Fellow photographer here, and this made me irate to read. First, this guy feels comfortable enough to trash you in front of your own family, so don't feel bad about outing his BS. He's bold. Your sister-in-law is a jerk for asking you to do something for free for someone who actively hates you. She doesn't even ask him to tone it down, and he feels just fine talking about you. Next, you are so annoying but not so when they can get your services for free. He'll be face to face with you all day while talking smack about you in his head. I can't tell you how many times I bent backwards, did things for people for free, and then be tossed aside once they got what they needed. I'm willing to bet that that's what's going to happen here. Value yourself and your craft. It goes above these relationships with crappy users. Tell sister-in-law now. Tell her that you're no longer comfortable doing this session knowing that her fiancé has badmouthed you and your husband and that she should find another photographer. Any guilting should be met with a statement, I highly doubt you would work for free for someone who actively hates you and your partner, while the other actively covered it. I was gifting both of you this session, and you found it fit to humiliate me by making me think otherwise of the both of you while getting a free service. Don't engage any further. No is no. Anyone who gives you guilt is free to help her pay for their session with another photographer. If they uninvite you for the wedding, good. Spend your precious time and money somewhere else. Got rude guy arrested for suspended license. In the mid-2000s, my friends and I would frequent a small billiards place in a neighboring town where you could rent a table by the hour or play per game. We'd play a few games, watch whatever sports were on TV, and have casual conversations. There were no problems and no drama until about 3 months of us visiting this place. A guy shows up and takes our spot at the billiards table. No big deal. We were all chatting anyway. 20 minutes later, my friend lets him know we want to play the next game, and the jerk is super dismissive. Needless to say, we didn't get in during the next game, so I politely let him know that we wanted to play next. Another lady chimed in that she wanted the game after us. The guy blatantly ignored me and the other woman. Some more time goes by, and the guy leaves the table. We see our chance to get it. We put the quarters in, and the balls are dispensed, except the green 6 ball. The guy took it to the bathroom with him. At this point, it was ridiculous, and we notified the manager. The manager noted it was 12:30 and they were going to be calling last call and closing, so he didn't want to make a scene by kicking him out. He gets us another ball so we can play. The guy comes out of the bathroom and knows we realized what he did. He smirks and proceeds to the patio to have a cigarette, bringing along his beer and the green billiards ball. The guy comes back in and tossed the ball he was holding onto the table, hitting a few balls on the table and messing up our game. He goes up to the bar just in time for last call. One of the friends I was with suggested we follow him home and each call the highway patrol to report a suspected drunk driver. 3 of 4 of us agree. So when he leaves, we used our trusty Nextel push-to-talk phones and coordinated several calls to the police. We provided details like license plate, vehicle make, and model and color, and mentioned the car nearly hit another vehicle, was swerving between lines, and driving erratically. This was under a 15-minute plan. We had no idea where this guy lived, but suspected it was close, as he was visiting a neighboring place, so our time was limited. The one guy who didn't notify the police tailed the jerk and called us giddy when a police officer pulled between him and the other guy and turned on his lights to pull him over. The police blotter that week included an arrest of a guy who was pulled over after multiple calls of erratic driving. He wasn't arrested for DWI, but instead for driving on a suspended license. Never be a jerk to people at the pool hall. It never turns out well. Karen wants to put the non-father on child support. My sister, who's 20, got pregnant when she was 19, and she was with her then boyfriend at the time. Her now ex was an old friend of mine. We weren't close, but we had a few classes together in high school and college, so we talked every now and then. My parents did not have enough to support my sister and the baby. The baby was from cheating, and the other guy left her. Now, obviously, I think what she did was bad, but I don't think anything is the fault of the baby, so I decided to let her live with me until she could get on her feet again. We had an agreement where she would stay and study/work, but she would most definitely have to have her own apartment by the time she was near or around giving birth. She's 1 month along right now. We were on the couch watching a show, and my sister started up a conversation. She mentioned how she's thinking of taking her ex to court for child support since she was already a month pregnant and they were technically still together. I was confused and asked her if her ex was the father, and she said no, but admitted that she's worried about money. Now, I'm sure we all know how it goes with a guy having to pay child support for a kid that's not even his, just because they were still together when the pregnancy happened. As a guy, this made me angry, and I asked if she was serious. She said yes, and that she needs the money badly as she doesn't think she can support herself once moving out. I told her that I think what she's going to do is messed up, and that since that's the case, I don't want her living with me. She was confused and asked what the heck. I told her that if she's going to make a random guy pay for her kid, then she can live on her own. I feel personal to this, as this is seriously one of the worst things to happen to a man, in my opinion, and the fact that my sister is willing to do that makes me not want to support her. I told her I want her gone in 2 days, and that I'll pay for a week at a hotel for her, but after that, she's on her own. She says I'm taking this way too personally, and that she won't pursue the court chasing then. I told her no, as I don't know if she'll do it after moving out, so I can't trust her. Where I think I might be the jerk is telling my sister to leave if she's going to make a guy pay child support unfairly / not letting her stay even if she says she won't do it then. Where I think I might not be the jerk, I don't know if she'll press the charges after she moves out, so she could be lying. And if she's going to force a guy to start paying, then she can definitely find her own rent. I feel like she's going to do this regardless. Well, what do you think? Should OP kick out his sister or let her stay? Please let us know. Check your facts or have your career ended. The internet has evolved quite a lot over the years. Some people may remember Usenet groups. I know I do. Used to have a lot of fun reading them. Kind of similar in a way to today's Reddit in a way. No matter what the subject was, someone would have a Usenet news group for it. But unlike today's Reddit, it was strictly text. You could download images, but they would take forever to download and could often be across several different messages. Just one of the messages missing and you wouldn't get the image. Things then improved. Download speeds slowly got faster, and there was IRC that came about. IRC saw the same thing. There was a chat room for anything and everything, and if there wasn't, you could clearly create it. If you were to try to watch a video over the internet back then, it would take you a couple of hours to download a music video. You get the idea. This is important for the context of the story. I was a writer on a couple of wrestling newsletters back in the mid to late 90s. We only published our newsletters online. You could have it emailed to you or go to a website to read it. Think we hosted on GeoCities or Tripod. Both wrestling newsletters were independent of each other, and I used different nicknames on each. One was more of a review and preview newsletter where we would post reviews of the most recent shows and events, talk about current feuds, and talk about what we may think will happen in the next big event. The other newsletter was a news and rumors newsletter with a few fun puzzles and competitions thrown in to keep things interesting. At the time, you had a few big-name wrestling news and rumors websites and a handful of small ones. I was a writer on one of the small ones. Sometimes we would get news and rumors from the big-name websites, giving them credit where appropriate. Sometimes we would hear things from people in the business. Everyone had their sources of information. And sometimes we would make an educated guess on possible scenarios based on current trends in the industry. It did get a bit cutthroat at times, with some newsletters claiming that they broke the news first when it had already been published in another newsletter first. And you would even have some newsletters devote all of their time to trying to rubbish the other newsletters for publishing false and misleading information. It was rumors. We did not always get it right. Through a couple of readers of my first wrestling newsletter, I learned of a huge surprise in the works for one organization, which could potentially lead to something happening at a big event coming up. I won't mention the surprise, but it involved a person from another sport. No other wrestling newsletter had reported it, so I included it as a rumor on the second wrestling newsletter. I was instantly rubbished by one of the major wrestling newsletters at the time, publishing a clearly nonsense rumor that would never happen, only for that very same newsletter to publish the exact same rumor 2 or 3 days later and claim to be the first one to publish it. This sort of stuff happened all the time. It did not bother me at all. Anyway, I happened to have a few wrestlers who actually read my first newsletter. No big names as such, but a couple of lesser-known wrestlers in the big organizations. I knew who they were, but refused to reveal their identities back then and refused to reveal them now. One of them let me know of an unknown fact from a major match a couple of years earlier. It was to do with an injury that happened during a part of the match. This fact had never been published anywhere else at the time. I mentioned that I wrote for another wrestling newsletter that dealt with news and rumors and asked if I could repeat the information. The wrestler said sure, but not to credit him, so I go ahead and publish the rumor. Straight away, I had another of the smaller wrestling newsletters say that it was nonsense. They said that it was impossible for the match to have continued had the injury happened. Then they started a smear campaign on the second newsletter. I was getting spam emails constantly, virus attempts originating from the competition. The competition even went so far as to claim that they had the full story of my wife of 10 years working the streets. Don't ask. They were trying to find anything to smear me with. There was more sinister and disgusting stuff, but I won't write it here. Why it got so personal? I don't know. But the funny thing was that at the time, I was a 22-year-old single university student, and if I had a wife of 10 years who was working the streets, I would have had to have married her when I was 12. But his smear campaign was working. Our readership dropped by nearly 50%. It was time to get some revenge, although I had no idea just how far the revenge would end up reaching. Firstly, I approached one of the bigger wrestling newsletters. They would often run ads at the bottom or rear of their newsletter for affiliated newsletters. I organized a new affiliation with them, removing an affiliation they had with the competition. Small potatoes. I started promoting the second newsletter heavily on Usenet and some of the wrestling groups, which ultimately led to an increase in our email subscription base, greater than what it was before his smear campaign. This negated any effect that his smear campaign had, but I was hungry for more. I wanted to shove it where the sun don't shine, so I contacted those wrestlers who read my first newsletter. I explained the situation to them, and they were happy to help out. It took a couple of weeks, but eventually I was able to post a link to a 15-second video, posted on a GeoCities webpage, as well as on a wrestling Usenet group, where the wrestler at the center of the injury rumor not only confirmed it, but gave a shout out to my second newsletter. While it validated me and my information, it still didn't shut the other guy up. Finally, a break. While the guy used an alias for his newsletter, he did actually mention his name a couple of times and where in the US he attended university. Using this information, I was able to get a friend in the US to do some searching for me, attended that very same university, and discovered that the guy had actually completed a journalism degree several years earlier. Further research indicated that he was now working as a reporter for a regional newspaper in the US. His wrestling newsletter might just be a hobby. So I decided to send all of the information I had, his smear campaign, etc., to the newspaper office. I didn't know what, if anything, it would do, but it was worth a shot. About a month later, I got an email back from the newspaper thanking me for the information. They discovered that he was using the newspaper's system to run the wrestling newsletter, which was against their policy, so they fired him. And because the newspaper was part of a chain of regional newspapers across the US, he was going to struggle to find another journalism job. The newsletter got shut down as well because without the newspaper system to run it, the guy had no way of continuing with the newsletter. Side note, I ended up finishing with my newsletter not long after anyway. The first newsletter, as I was just a writer for it, I finished up with it when the owner of the newsletter decided to close it down. He didn't have the time to devote to it due to work commitments. The second one, I started off as just a writer/contributor, then took over their competitions, then eventually over the whole newsletter. Original owner didn't want to do it anymore. But in the end, I was finishing up at university. I had to move on with my career, so I closed it down. Hair too long for the dress code? We'll see about that. A few years ago, I was a department manager for a large conference center. I ran the top performing department as determined by guest feedback surveys for a large margin. Like no other department out of 1,200 employees was even close. And my dress style was always nice and professional. Dress code didn't say we needed to have on button-up shirts and ties, but I did anyway because I looked great and professional, and I met with the leaders of large conferences multiple times per day. I dressed to impress. They were my clients, and whatever their problem was, I was going to fix it. My demeanor and professional attire did great things to alleviate their concerns. My bosses got on a dress code kick for some reason. They made me and my small department, 6 people total, start wearing lame, colorful, standardized shirts with a logo on the front. The rationale was that the clients should be able to identify me as a staff member. I get the logic, but that was what my lanyard and name badge were for. Plus, the bright/colorful dress code shirt was actually detrimental to my work, as I often worked backstage as a tech during band performances. Industry standard color for techs is black, but they wanted me to wear bright yellow. Okay? I tell them my concerns for my shirt's bright colors being a distraction for the audience as I do work backstage. My bosses don't care. They made up a new dress code and want me to follow it. Fine. So I wear the shirt. But then I also wear a nice sweater vest, or just a vest on top of it. Still got my tie on. I like ties. But to make it explicitly clear I'm staff, I get my own hat made, at my own expense too, that shows the company's name on it. Again, my badge and lanyard are always visible, but now I can do my backstage work without being a distraction to the audience that might glimpse my movement as I go about doing scene changes, etc. But then my bosses tell me that the company's logo has to be visible on my shirt, and I therefore can't wear a vest. So then I get the company's logo embroidered on my shirt sleeve, also at personal expense. Problem solved, right? I'm wearing the shirt they gave me and the company's logo is visible. At this point, my boss is upset with me and is trying to write me up for any possible infringement of company policies. I know how to read a room, and I immediately start going to the HR director to approve of my new and evolving malicious compliances of this ever-changing dress code policy. My boss says that we can't wear hats. Okay, fine. My hair is visible for all to see, and I quickly become aware of the next thing my boss is going to tell me to fix: my hair. They're going to cite some vague language in the employee handbook about hair length. So I go to the HR director preemptively and ask for clarification for hair length. After a 10-minute conversation, we both agree that I am perfectly fine with nothing to worry about. My hair is nice, in a bun, and looks good. It's well kept and stylish, and my specific clientele actually really like it because they're mostly hipsters anyway. But my bosses don't see it that way. They say that my hair is too long and it needs to be cut. I ask them how long is too long. I am, after all, a rule follower and will obey the rules. One of my bosses, a lady with long hair that is actually against dress code because it's not put up into a bun, says that my hair should be less than shoulder length. My hair was in a man bun. I ask her if that policy extends to ladies as well. She says no, obviously, that this dress code only applies to men. Apologetically and feigning ignorance, I ask her to show me where it says that in the employee handbook. She shows me the section where it says that if the hair is longer than shoulder length, regardless of gender, it should be kept in a bun. I tell her that my hair is in a bun as opposed to hers. Oh man, now it's getting real. I just called them out. They're not happy. My other boss, a guy with super short hair, less than 1/4 of an inch long, tells me that as a guy, my hair shouldn't touch my shirt's collar. He tells me that a few stray hairs of mine are touching my collar. I pull out my phone and take a picture of him. I show him that even his 1/4 inch hairs are touching the collar. His head was leaned back and his hair was touching his collar. I ask them again to clarify how long is too long, because his 1/4 inch hair is too long for their standards. Side note, I love my thick hair. Someone telling me to cut it arbitrarily speaks fighting words. Then they tell me that I just need to do what I'm told because it's company policy, and if I don't do it, they'll get HR involved. I tell them I already got HR involved, and the HR director explicitly told me that my hair was perfectly fine. But these two bosses of mine just wouldn't let it go. They had to go after my hair. They told me that since I'm a manager and meet with group leaders, I have to go above and beyond what the dress code says, and I have to act professional in order for us to receive good guest feedback regarding professionalism. I tell them that me and my department are already the most professional and highest rated department according to guest feedback surveys. I take the printout of the survey results out from my bag because I anticipated my lack of professionalism was going to be questioned and had it printed in advance, and I show them the survey. They read it, toss the paper aside, and tell me to cut my hair or be written up. Fine. The next day, I come into work with a shaved head. They never told me to cut my hair again because I look far worse with no hair. Coincidentally, they also let me wear my hat again, but only because my shaved head was a sore sight. As a point of interest, when I resigned from my position a year later, I submitted to HR my 80-point paper why my two bosses caused me to leave the organization, how they stifled me and my department from doing legitimately good and quality work, and how I felt that under their leadership, I was incapable of ever winning. A month after I left, I heard from a friend and previous coworker who was still at the company that my direct boss was forced to retire and my other boss was fired. My friend told me that they were privy to a conversation held between the CEO and my female boss, the one who was fired, and my friend overheard the CEO say, "Your time at this company is over, and I want you to know that when you're gone, your position will not be filled. Consider you and your position eliminated." Lastly, I haven't cut my hair since I left, apart from occasional trims. It's now almost 3 feet long, and I plan on giving my gorgeous lion's mane away to some charity that deals with making wigs for kids. Well, what do you think? Should dress codes be allowed to keep men from having long hair? Please let us know. Maybe the people who make these rules are just mad because they're bald. Am I the jerk for taking away and returning thousands of dollars given to my teenage kids? My husband and I are really disagreeing on this, and I would really like a third opinion. My parents are very wealthy. Since I was a kid, they would use money and material possessions to control and manipulate my siblings and me. An example would be when I went to college. They paid for it and all of my expenses. They used that as a tool to completely control my life. Anything I did that they didn't approve of, they would empty my account. I went completely no contact with them 15 years ago. My husband knows this and knows that they are not allowed any access into my life. I have 2 teenagers, one 15 and one 14. Both my kids have bank accounts that are in my name. Last weekend, I noticed my eldest had a game in their room that I knew to be about $80 that I didn't buy them. I asked them about it, and they claimed a friend had got it for them. My eldest is a terrible liar, and I knew immediately something suspicious was happening. Long story short, I got the truth out of my kids. My parents had gotten in contact with my kids through my brother. They sent about $10,000 in cash to my brother, which he gave to my kids, $5,000 each. I assume during one of these times he babysat them. He put them on the phone with my parents, and they told my kids who they were and lied to them about why they never met. They claimed to love them, despite never meeting, and wanted to support them. The arrangement was that my parents would send $1,000 every month to the kids as long as they kept it a secret from me. They made grandiose claims about taking them on vacations as well. My brother is dead to me now. I have completely cut him from my life. Where I am being told I'm being unreasonable is when it comes to the money. Each kid had accumulated about $8,000. My husband thought that we should just keep it and put it away for the kids. I said no and sent the money to my parents' address with a strongly worded letter. Obviously, my kids are super upset, which I will deal with. I am surprised, though, that my husband isn't supporting me. My reasoning is that if my kids keep the money, my parents will find a way to use it against them. They are master manipulators. I have no doubt that they had some grand scheme to try to turn my kids against me. My husband disagrees and thinks that I'm being unfair. We are well enough off financially to pay for our kids' education and support them if need be, so I don't really see the point. Am I being the jerk for returning the money? Well, what do you think? Should OP let her kids keep the money or not? Please let us know. She could always just send it to me. I wouldn't mind having $10,000. I'm not your caterer. I'm your colleague. This happened in the first few months of my career starting right out of college. I was a 21-year-old woman at the time, doing my hardest as a new engineer in a company that has about 30% of its workforce within 5 years of retirement eligibility. I was being trained on a new materials management/procurement software that the company was rolling out. This was an all-morning training in our computer lab, so the office catered in a light breakfast available in the room next door to the lab. I was early to the training and getting myself set up at a desk when I headed in to get some tea and a muffin. Cue the old guy I've never met before. We say good morning, and he makes some comments to me about not liking the lid style of the coffee cups. They're the flat ones where you pull the tab back instead of the raised ones with a lip. I politely agree while I'm pouring water and making tea. A few other people come in, and at this point I've got my plate fixed up and I'm walking out of the room when, "Excuse me." I turn around to see what's going on when I see the older man looking right at me. "Do you know which one of these is decaf?" I'm confused. "No, I don't drink coffee actually. Sorry." He straightens up and looks at me, frustrated. "Well, how am I supposed to know?" Everyone else at the refreshment table is now looking at me, confused. I'm halfway out the door, and there are like 5 other people who he can ask. "Aren't you from the caterer?" And I suddenly realize that this man thinks I'm a college student sent here to help, because I couldn't possibly look like the kind of person who could need to know the same software as him. I'll admit, I was dressed in a very college-quality business casual, but it was a cardigan and black slacks. I definitely wasn't in the t-shirt and jeans of a catering employee. Cue all of my insecurity at being a young female in a senior male-dominated profession and company. I respond, "No, I'm actually here for the same training as you." He looks at me, somewhat surprised. "Oh," he said. No apology, no laughter, no introduction, nothing. I left the room, settled into my training, and never saw that man again in the 8 years I built my career there. Woman assumes I was helping a customer, but I was helping my mom. I was making some homemade sheet candy, and before I started cooking, I noticed that I was out of cooking spray. So my mom and I head for the nearest grocery store. The employees at the store, which I worked at for a short time, wear a blue apron with the store name on the front. I was wearing a black apron covered in powdered sugar from the last batch I had made a couple of weeks prior. I had forgotten to take the apron off before heading out. While we were there, we decided to pick up a few extra things instead of just the cooking spray. My mom can't bend over due to having had a knee replacement surgery a while back, so I was helping her out by grabbing items off the lower shelf. My mom shuffled forwards a bit when I hear it. Ahem. I turned around and faced a woman with a typical Karen haircut. I couldn't really see much of her face, but her mask definitely screamed to me, "I demand attention," with how brightly colored it was. But it was the eyes. She was glaring at me for some reason, and I couldn't figure out quite why. "Oh, sorry, am I in your way?" This has not been the first time I've been confronted by someone for being in the way while looking for something or waiting for my mom to move forward. You should be helping other customers. Uh-oh. I knew what this was the second she said that. There was no way she could recognize me as a former employee since I wasn't wearing my work wig and was only wearing a black bandana. I don't work here, ma'am. I stood up from my crouched position and straightened my apron since it had gotten up on my back a bit. Yes, you do. You're wearing an apron and helping that jerk get her groceries. That woman is my mother, and I don't work here. Maybe instead of being what you called my mom, you should think before you speak. I went to turn and walk away from her when she screeched at me. Get me your manager. You want me to get you my manager? Okay. I have a bit of a temper when people insult my family, but insulting my mom directly had majorly put me in a bad mood. What you may not know is that I'm the kind of person who becomes quite the smarty when confronted angrily. So I went and got my manager, my mother. Here's your manager. This woman has managed me for 24 years. Why don't you tell her what your complaint is? My mom looked so confused, but the Karen just huffed and stormed out of the aisle. I thought that would be the end of it. We continued shopping when that same bright beacon of a mask came wheeling around the corner with a real employee in tow. That's her. That's the employee that refused to help me. Me. Mom, you need my help in here? Nope, I'm good. Meet you back at the car. The Karen stomped over to me, pointing and screeching at me and the employee. She was demanding I be fired for refusing to help her and instead favoring another customer. I just stared at her, scratched my nose through my mask, and waited for her to stop shrieking before I pointed at my apron. Black, not blue, lady. I don't work here. I was shopping with my mom. Leave me alone. The employee looked so confused, only managing out a weak, she doesn't work here. The second that Karen started yelling at the employee, I just booked it out of there. I feel bad for leaving the guy with that crazy lady, but I wasn't about to deal with her crap or risk completely snapping and doing something crazy after she had insulted my mother. I must have a retail face or something, or rather retail eyes, with all of us having to wear masks. But really, lady? Insulting a customer and demanding a person wearing a sugar-covered apron to help you? I ain't no sugary sweet maid that bends to your every will. Speaking of sugary sweets, what's your favorite kind of candy of all time? Please let us know. Take 5 for the win, bruh. Give me an undeserving bad grade on a project? Enjoy my final exam. I was in grade 11, and I was taking a class that had basic web design. At the beginning of the year, things were fine, until about midway, where a teacher seemed to be going through some personal issues and would mark us even more harshly than before. I was usually getting straight 85s to 90s, and now I'm barely getting 60s. I even asked my fellow classmates if they thought I deserved that grade, and no one agreed. So we're getting close to summer, and our final exam was coming up, worth 30% of our final grade. And the project we had to do was to create a company and sell a board game. He handed out his checklist of things that are needed and added at the bottom that if we can play the game in class with others, he would give us extra points. Me being a teenager at the time decided it's time for some malicious compliance. I spent 2 weeks meticulously putting this website together. I think we were using Adobe Dreamweaver at the time. I had a big flashy intro that I made in Flash and even had the website in different languages. Wasn't asked, but I added it for flair. The game I decided to make for this was very unique. I called it Are You Bored Yet? Inside this game was a single board with 10 spaces, 2 sorry tokens, and a single dice. The object of this game was if you can roll the same number 10 times in a row, you get a point, and the first one to 10 points wins. However, if you can't, you lose a point and go back down to the bottom. So around this time I got sick, and I had to miss about 2 to 3 weeks of school. This means I had to miss the presentation date. However, I had gotten a doctor's note and a note from the hospital stating that I had to miss due to illness. All my other classes allowed me to make up the exams, and I had to give my presentation to the teacher. So I stand up in front of the empty class and I start giving my presentation, and all things are going well. At the end of it, he says, "Thank you for your time," and starts to walk me out. I say, "Hold on, teacher. According to your rules, we must play a game if I want extra marks." You could see the "oh crap" look in his eyes. Note that the teacher put that in there because he wanted it to be played with other students, but since there were no other students left in the class, he was forced to play it with me. I sat there for a good 45 minutes. He didn't want to stop, and I wasn't going to stop him, playing this game, none of us being able to score a point. Frustrated, he turns to me and says, "I'll give you bonus marks if you just say we completed the game." I agreed and went my way. About 2 weeks later, we go back in to get our final marks, and I see how he did. To my shock and smile, I had received a 105 on the exam. I like to believe he stopped being so grouchy with his markings afterwards. I'm the comedian, but you're the joke. I do stand-up comedy sometimes. I was performing at a bar/restaurant deal and was sitting in the back taking care of some emails waiting for my set time. I went to the bar to get a drink, had a chat with the bartender for a few minutes, then got the signal I had 5 minutes till show, so went back. When I got to the back room, I realized I had left my phone on the bar, so ran out again to collect it. Enter Karen. Not her real name, of course. At a table just left of dead center facing the stage, right by the back entrance I'd been popping in and out of all night, and a big group of 6 or 7 people. But even in my brief forays out, I could hear her shrill voice dominating their conversation. I guess here's as good a place as any to mention I was wearing a yellow sweatshirt and cargo shorts. The servers wear all black. Karen. Sir, excuse me, sir. Me. What's up? Can you check on our food, please? All we ordered was some wings, and it's been like half an hour already. Me. Your server can help you with that. I'm not a waiter. What? Oh, dish boy, line cook, whatever. You work here, so just when you go back there, ask about my food. Me. Oh no, you see, No, I get it. You aren't a waiter, but do you work here? Kind of. Let me explain. Someone in her party. I don't think he's a waiter. Shut it, okay? I've got this. You work here. You can bring me my food. Just a quick little, trot, 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 carry, boom, done. Me. I can't do that. Karen. Ungodly shriek. Why not? Others in her party. Karen, oh my gosh, quiet down. They tried to wave me away. I was weighing in my mind whether walking away had the higher chance of getting me fired from future gigs there, or staying and getting into it with her did. I was just going down the stay and get into it with her track when the MC gets up there and goes, now a special treat for our patrons tonight, local comedian. So I just stopped myself, lock eyes with Karen, walk backwards to the stage, unflinching. I grab the microphone. Her table is cracking up, realizing what's happened, and I say, well, I'd hoped to do a show for you tonight, folks, but looks like that won't be possible. Apparently, I've been reassigned. I start riffing about people who think you work there when you don't and accuse you of lying and how absurd a concept that is. But then it's too perfect. The waitress is coming out with wings and headed straight for her table. I know the waitress. I've performed here before. So I transition and I'm just like, you caught me, lady. Can't hide anymore. And I grab the wings from the waitress and I'm like, oh, Donna, I see you trying to hone in on my section. Can't you see this is my table? And all throughout the rest of the bit, I would go over and fill their water glasses, bust their plates. Whenever I hit a dry spot, I was like, all right, hold on. Gotta check in with my customers. Can I interest you in any dessert? How we doing over here? Speak into the mic, please. Karen hated it, but the others at her table were dying laughing and would even sometimes flag me down for water or appetizers. The set ends and Karen goes to file a complaint. Her friends or coworkers, whoever, try to stop her from doing so, and some leave the venue because of her. A couple stay back to try and defend me, and I told them not to worry because the manager and I were cool. But they got to see for themselves. The manager is an old school Armenian guy, and he has no tolerance for this BS. This particular venue was a biker bar before the area got gentrified, so he's used to dealing with way rowdier customers than Karen. So she's going off about mistreatment at the hands of his employees and how I'm probably not licensed to be a food server and that she wanted something done. The manager plays dumb just to see her get worked up and goes, who, this guy? Even though the entire floor saw me give her a hard time. Manager, he doesn't work for me. Karen, what the heck are you talking about? Manager, it's 11:30 p.m. He worked for me from 10 p.m. till 11 p.m. That's what I paid him for as a freelancer. That's over. Now he's just some guy. Karen, well, when he was working for you, he was rude and abstinent. Me, what, on stage? Of course I was abstinent. It's not that kind of show. Karen, you know what I mean. See, he's making fun of how I talk. Manager, he's a comedian. That's what I paid for. Karen, I was a customer treated poorly in your establishment. He was acting as a server here when he served me, and I want a refund on my meal. Or at the very least, turning dramatically to me, Gollum voice. An apology. Me. All right, I might have been a little rude towards the end there, but in my defense, she didn't tip. Manager. Is that true? Did you not tip? Karen. Why would I have tipped the comedian? Manager. I thought you said he was acting as a server. Karen was a little tipsy at this point, so somehow drunk logic convinced her smashing a glass would get her point across. All it did was get the manager to have her bounced. Her remaining friends apologized to the manager and said they barely knew her, and they hoped this wouldn't mean they couldn't come in there anymore without her, and he was super nice about it. I told them I hoped I hadn't put a damper on their night, and they said they can't wait to tell everyone else about Karen's outburst. So I don't have a career as a waiter in my future. Kudos to all you service workers who put up with these insufferable people day in and day out. Entitled sister wants me to house my niece for free during her college. My niece had to move back in with her mother after the lockdown started. She lost her job and all her classes were online. Her lease was month to month, so she didn't have to worry about breaking her lease. Recently, the schools have reopened and she has started attending classes again. Problem is, her apartment, which was walking distance from her university, is now rented. Parking in the area sucks, and it's an hour one way from her mother's house on public transit. I will say now that my niece is also incredibly spoiled and is taking classes for a degree with no practical benefits. By this, I mean that it will in no way help her with a career path, nor are they necessary courses for further education. Got a call from my sister asking if my niece could live with me because I live alone in a 2-bedroom house and I'm also a 15-minute bus trip away from her uni. I said no for several reasons. 1. I work nights and need to sleep during the day. My niece is a very loud young lady and doesn't understand the concept of an indoor voice. Last time she stayed in the same home as me, I was sleep deprived because of her practically yelling on her phone, and it affected how I did my job, resulting in a write-up. 2. My niece is also a very messy person. I helped with the move out and the memory makes me shudder. Some of the unwashed dishes in the sink were tossed because they were beyond cleaning. She tried to just sit on random crap and text her friends and scroll TikTok. I had to take her phone and lock it in the glove box for the U-Haul we rented to get her to help me move. My sister still calls me a jerk for doing this. 3. While I may have a 2-bedroom home, the second room is my office/work room. I've been in the process of making wire-wrapped necklaces to sell online for extra income, and I need the area as a workspace. It's also my library, for lack of a better word. I keep my collection of novels on bookshelves in there, and a comfy old recliner for reading in. 4. My niece is allergic to cats, and I have 3. My sister seems to think that I can keep them all either in my bedroom or locked up in the basement for the school year. Forget that. 5. And this is the big one. My older sister is under the belief that my niece wouldn't have to help out with household expenses or be expected to cook for herself. She also thinks that my niece shouldn't have to get a job while in school to focus on her studies. Tried to pull the "we're family and we should help each other out" card. But that didn't count for crap when my step-siblings nearly made me homeless after my stepdad passed and gave me 30 days to find a new place for me and my dog. Dog-friendly buildings where I live are hard to find. The only way I would agree for my niece to live with me is that she would give me $250 a month to help cover utilities and part of the internet. Figured that is a steal considering a cheap place around her school is more than double, even triple that, plus utilities, and she could use the garage for her car for free. But I would also expect her to buy her own food and clean up after herself, like doing her own laundry, keeping her room clean, and putting dishes at least in the sink, if not the dishwasher. Would not expect her to cut the grass or shovel snow. The thought of even asking her to do this already gives me a headache. Now I'm getting texts from both my sisters telling me that I'm a horrible person and should open my home to this, that it's unreasonable to expect a 19-year-old to spend 2 hours on the bus every day and yada yada. Part of me feels guilty because I could move my office and workspace down into my basement. Can't be a living space due to a lack of windows, but I can't afford the expenses of a second person in my home without them chipping in for the bills. Nor will I lock my cats away in their room. Edit. Should have been more clear. I don't have plans on letting her live with me. The $250 thing I mentioned was more of a what-if situation that I'm not entertaining. This post was more of a rant than anything else, but I am appreciative of the advice and the validation on my choice, even though this wasn't meant to be an Am I the Jerk post. Well, what would you do in this situation? Would you let your niece live with you or not? Please let us know. Give us a biological grandkid, and it better be a male. My brother and my sister-in-law have been married for 6 years. I love them both dearly. They adopted a girl about a year ago. My parents were happy about this too, at first. They got really angry when my brother and sister-in-law announced recently that their daughter would be their only child and they do not want biological kids. My mom and dad lost their crap. They told my brother he had to get my sister-in-law pregnant. He was the family's male heir, and he would have to have a biological son to carry forward the family name. This makes no sense to me, nor my bro and sister-in-law. It's not as if we're a family of European royalty. Who gives a hoot about the family name in this day and age? Well, my parents do apparently. They've been berating my brother and guilt-tripping my sister-in-law, making her feel like she's taking something away from our family. On one occasion, they actually suggested that my brother leave my sister-in-law if she didn't want to get pregnant and have a son with another woman. What's even worse is that they've stopped paying attention to my niece. Earlier, they would call and talk to her almost every day, but ever since they were told about my bro and sister-in-law's decision, they've stopped calling her. This upsets me and has deeply saddened my bro and sister-in-law. The kid is 3 years old and doesn't deserve this kind of treatment. Last month, brother told me that mom and dad had called him and they had talked about something unrelated. When he asked if they wanted to talk to their granddaughter, they said they had talked to their real grandchild when my brother came to his senses and decided to give them one. I was angrier than I've been in a long time. I called my parents and unloaded on them. I told them how selfish and cruel they were being, and how dare they take out their anger on my niece, along with a lot of other things I can't even remember. My mom started crying as she's not used to being yelled at. I used some very harsh words, but I just can't believe they're being so cruel towards someone so innocent. After that, my parents have tried to rally our relatives, aunts, uncles, cousins, and our grandparents to gang up on my brother and sister-in-law to pressure them into having a biological child, obviously male. However, their plan has failed miserably. Most of the relatives told them that they're being crazy. Cousins repeated some of the things that I had said to them. Uncles and aunts told them even if they did want a biological grandson, there was no excuse for the way that they were treating my niece. Even my grandparents, who are quite old-fashioned, admonished them for their behavior towards my niece. My brother has banned them from his home. I banned them from mine. This ban will stay in place until they start treating my niece like their granddaughter, i.e. the way she deserves to be treated. I feel like my grandparents shunning my niece hurts even more because when she first became a part of the family, they appeared to love her. They would speak to her on the phone, play with her when they visited. But all of that stopped when they found out that my brother and sister-in-law won't be having any biological kids. They just rejected her for no fault of her own. Force me to take a useless sports physical? I'll make sure I fail it. Some background. In high school, I went to an academic magnet school. Essentially, it was a public school ran like a private school. You had to have certain test scores to get bus transportation since it was for the whole county. Way stricter dress code than all of the other schools in the district, and they were able to have a ton of extra rules because it was a choice school. Now, I was the first graduating class. I was there the first year it opened. At that time, it was 5th through 9th grade, and I started as a freshman. The second year, they had completed the elementary wing, and so it was K through 10. They added some grades until my senior year when it was finally K through 12. As the school grew, it continued to add more policies. My sophomore year, the school's second year of being open, they began a new policy where all students 7th grade and above had to be on a sports team everywhere. I thought this was really stupid. I hated it. I'm not an athlete. I was in other clubs and I was getting increasingly involved with my church. Being the mature 16-year-old I was, my initial plan was to join a team and have a bad attitude, like an awfully bad attitude, so that no one would have any fun and this would prove to the school how awful this rule was. Instead, for all the lazy kids like me, they started a school walking team. It wasn't power walking, just regular walking. We just had to walk around the neighborhood for about 45 minutes 3 times a week after school. I was fine with this. I didn't mind walking around. Of course, there was an adult coach, but since the whole thing was ridiculous anyways, my friends and I declared ourselves co-captains. This mostly consisted in telling the middle schoolers to walk faster. No one else considered us co-captains, but we did. And that's all that mattered to us since it was all a joke anyways. I did that my sophomore and junior years, but fast forward to my senior year. I was 18, working part-time about 15 to 20 hours a week. I was super involved in my church, and my family was a chaotic mess of dysfunction that traumatized me in numerous ways. They finally enforced the state law that everyone on a sports team has to have an annual physical on file. I didn't really bother with this since it wasn't a real sport anyways. Eventually, they came to me and said that it was so late in the season that even if I got a physical, I would need to pick a different sport in the winter or spring. Walking team was a fall sport. I was essentially just like, forget this. I had enough other things in my life to deal with, and I didn't want to put up with this crap anymore. I decided to do exactly what they said and get the physical. I also decided I would do my best to fail it. So eventually I went and saw a doctor. It's important to note that I didn't have a primary care doctor at the time. That's why I didn't get a physical before then. So I just went to some little walk-in clinic and I told them that I needed a sports physical. I didn't tell them what the sport was. Now, as I was filling out the patient history form, I answered truthfully. I did not lie, but I didn't provide any context. So I checked yes to a history of asthma, mostly from when I was a kid, severe seasonal allergies, and a history of seizures. See, when I was 13, I had a couple dozen seizures in a day or two. No one knew what was going on, and eventually I was diagnosed with epilepsy, specifically having absent seizures. Since then, I had been taking anticonvulsants every day. As far as I'm aware, even 20 years after that initial episode, I'm not sure I've had a full-blown seizure since then. It's literally the mildest case of epilepsy I've ever heard of. The doctor does a quick physical exam, mostly vitals and similar things. As she looks at my patient history form, she asks about the seizures. I explained that I was diagnosed with epilepsy. I take anticonvulsants, and I have a neurologist I see about once or twice a year. She says, "Well, I can't pass you until I hear from your neurologist." I basically hopped out of the chair, happily said thank you, and walked out. I never did contact the neurologist. Instead, I just gave the paperwork to the school. And that's how I, a relatively healthy 18-year-old, got medically disqualified from the school walking team. Speaking of sports, do you play any sports? And if so, which ones? Please let us know. I get my exercise when I go shopping. Grandpa gives Karen a taste of her own medicine. This all took place a long time ago when I was about 17 years old. Let's meet the cast. We've got me, we've got awesome grandfather, we've got nephew, and we've got Karen. Memory is a little fuzzy, as this took place over 20 years ago, so may not be verbatim. This was at a time my parents were having some troubles, so I wound up staying on my grandfather's farm. Love that old man so much and really miss him. God rest his soul. He passed on about 5 years ago. That morning after breakfast, Grandma told us the house larder was getting a little low and asked us to go to the store to pick up a few things. So, after morning chores were done and the animals were fed, we packed up into Grandpa's truck and headed into town. At this time, I was dealing with yet-to-be-diagnosed emotional distress due to family issues and PTSD. Now, I'm dressed in a pink top, torn jeans, and work boots from living on the farm, so I wouldn't ruin my good shoes in the mud and animal excrement. There was no possible way I could be mistaken for an employee of the store, but you know Karens. While in the store, Grandpa sent me off to a couple aisles to grab a couple things and bring them to him, which I did without thinking about it. That's when the Karen of the story entered, without an ahem, excuse me, or any other word. She marches up to me right in front of my grandpa and says, "When you're done helping this old man with his shopping, I want you to help me with mine." Was all I was able to get out before she yelled, "You young people need to learn your place. Now you can forget this old man and help me with my shopping." That's when Grandpa stepped between us. "This is my granddaughter, miss, and we are shopping, so kindly toddle off and go ask an employee for help." "Ugh!" from the Karen, who actually reached around my grandpa, grabbed my arm, and yanked me towards her. "She's my help now, and you can buzz off." That's when my PTSD kicked in. I yanked my arm out of her grasp, pushed her away, and yelled, "Get away from me!" She kept yelling, "You will help me now, jerk. I don't care what you want." Then Grandpa lost it and bopped her upside the head. "You get away from her right now." Grandpa roared at her so loud the entire store heard it. Karen finally got her head together as several employees came racing into the aisle to see what all the yelling was about. They were greeted with the sight of my grandpa looming menacingly over Karen, my cousin holding me and comforting me, and Karen now trying to get up off the floor and screeching about calling the cops and suing the store. When the manager arrived, the look on his face said another small piece of his soul died just then. Then he recognized the Karen. He tried to say something to Karen, but she was yelling and screeching so much she just wasn't about to listen to anyone. Grandpa put a stop to that right quick. "Silence!" he roared at Karen. "Not another word." Karen fell silent instantly, Something about Grandpa said he meant business and would brook no arguments from her. But that didn't stop her from staring daggers at everyone. The manager looked at Karen for a moment, then said, "Do you remember the last little talk we had? Forget that there are security cameras in the store?" Security cameras were a new feature added by head office and were bulky, plainly obvious pieces of equipment back then. Karen eyed Grandpa but nodded. "Do you remember what I said would happen if you did this very thing to another customer?" Karen went white as a sheet, but she nodded. "Then I have no choice but to ban you from the store and arrange a ban from all associated stores as well, and call the police if these people want to press charges. And I'll remind you, we do have cameras in the store and several witnesses." Grandpa asked me if I wanted to press charges. I just shook my head no. All I wanted was to crawl into Grandma's lap for a while until I felt better. Grandpa told the manager no, charges won't be necessary. The ban from this and several other stores will be more than sufficient. The manager did offer to compensate us for having to deal with her, but Grandpa had a better and more yummy idea. Grandpa made him a counteroffer. Instead of compensation, let us have a go at your cake selection. That will be more than enough. Needless to say, we went home with a chocolate truffle cake. Yummy. Am I the jerk for leaving my boyfriend's family's lunch because I was being asked to change my clothes? Sometime last year, I stayed at my boyfriend's, now ex, house for the night. I just went over to hang out and I was going to leave the next day. I didn't think there were any plans for the next day. After I woke up, his mom lets me know that they're having a big family gathering and my boyfriend says I should stay. That's fine with me. I was happy to stay. I attended quite a few of their family events, and while I was usually anxious, I was never particularly uncomfortable. Everything was fine until his mom brought up the fact that her dad was going to come. I'd never met him before, and I was told he was very traditional. This was apparently going to be an issue because I was wearing shorts, and my boyfriend and his mother both told me I needed to change. Since I had no clothes, because I was just staying for the night and going home, I'd have to wear his mother's clothes. I explained to them that while I respect his granddad's traditional values, I didn't feel comfortable with that dictating what I could wear. If I knew about it in advance, I probably would have worn longer pants to save the drama, but I didn't get that chance. His mother explained to me that there was a good chance her dad would confront me about my clothes, and even after I explained that that didn't bother me, she still insisted that I change. I took my boyfriend aside and explained to him that I wasn't comfortable with what was happening. It also affected me more than it usually would because I knew his mother didn't like me. She always had something critical to say about me, whether it was about my makeup, my clothes, my personality, my life/university choices, or my housing situation. He still sided with his mother and said that I should just change to avoid confrontation with her. His sister came first, and after she found out about what was going on, she tried to explain to both of them that it shouldn't be an issue, and if I wasn't bothered, then everyone should accept that. That didn't change anyone's mind. More family members started coming, and I got overwhelmed with trying to say hello to everyone, introducing themselves to me, while I still had two people trying to get me to leave to get changed. I even met the grandfather, who didn't say anything to me, but that didn't change their minds. I eventually decided it would just be better if I left, since neither me nor them were going to change our minds, and the whole situation was overwhelming and making me anxious. My boyfriend didn't walk me out or really talk to me for the rest of the day. He never understood why I was upset. I called my friend after I left, and she was fully on my side. But I've had mixed reactions with other people, with some people saying I should have just changed to avoid all of the fuss. Well, what would you do in this situation? Would you have changed like the mother and boyfriend wanted you to or not? Please let us know. I smell some strong Norman Bates vibes. Sounds like you dodged a bullet, sweetie. Do you have any idea who I am? So this was years ago, and we'll need a little setup. I'll try to make it so I can't be so easily identified, but we'll also try to give enough detail that can be checked up on as it involves a reasonably famous individual. Therefore, I have no doubt people may be skeptical. So, for years I lived in Kennebunkport in Maine, USA. It's very much a holiday town and gets busy in the summer. Now, as the summer period starts, a very special guest would arrive, as they had a holiday home in the northern end of town on a small peninsula. The 41st President of the United States, the late George Bush Sr. The flags and banners used to come out. "Welcome back, Mr. President." There were plenty of restaurants in the town, many owned by the same company, and the president used to dine with us a lot. So, one day I was wiping down the bar. It was a quiet day, and we only had a few people dining. Behind the bar is a huge fish tank, so you can see through the tank to the front door. I saw a lady walking across the drive, well-dressed and straightening her skirt. I placed the cleaning stuff under the bar and awaited the lady. Me. May I help you? Karen. I hope so. Is the order ready? Me. I'm not aware of any order, but I'll have a check with the kitchen. Can I take your name? Karen. You don't even know who I am? What an embarrassment. She would go on to tell me that she was here for an order of oysters and clams for the presidential compound. Now, this wasn't unusual. The president often got complimentary oysters whenever he would dine with us. Plus, we would often send food up to the compound, but it was never this lady and never a sole person who would pick it up. Certainly not on foot, and we knew the cars they used. I could not get a single word in. She berated me for a while. I'll have your job. Or, is this the disrespectful shambolic service that you always provide? And the usual crap. Then she spies the gentleman behind me, full suit, very smart, who has come to see what the commotion was all about. Karen flicks her head his way and utters, You, come here. Karen went into her rant to be stopped 10 seconds in as the man in the suit gestured for her to come through into the back dining area. Suited man. Madam, will you just step this way, please, and we can resolve this? Now, I don't work here, but on the other side of the wall, she saw George Bush, Barbara Bush, a few guests who were dining with us. I should mention, though you probably know, ex-presidents who were in office before 1997 were provided Secret Service agents to protect them and their family for life. Obama brought this back in making George W. Bush the first president to have lifelong security since 1997. One of President Bush's agents was sat in the corner. The other one was the well-dressed man by Karen's side, whom she had incorrectly assumed was my manager. Her face went white and she ran. Sort of. She had heels on. She stumbled and headbutted the front door before stumbling over the driveway like a newborn deer trying to walk for the first time. The president's staff just let her go, simply asking for a copy of the CCTV before they left. According to one of my bosses, the lady was picked up by the sheriff's department, charged and fined a few months later. I think there was some sort of fraud charges. I had nothing to do with it after she ran out. Our managers dealt with most of it. Like I said, a larger company owned most restaurants in town. We only got snippets. Apparently, attempting to steal products and defraud a business by way of claiming to work for an ex-president of the United States is frowned upon in Maine. So yeah, she didn't work on the president's team. She worked at Walmart in a town called Wells up the coast. Just wanted to try her luck and had probably heard that the president dined here when he was in town. I believe she lost her job there and was arrested and fined a few months later. Am I the jerk for not changing our cat's name? I, 41 female, and my husband, 50 male, have 3 kids. My oldest and youngest are very like me, easygoing and prefer to avoid arguments. My husband and my middle child, 16 female, seem to thrive on arguing. I try to go the pick your battle route. If it's important, fight for it. If it's not, let it go. My husband and her argue constantly. Ever since our previous cat died, my daughter had been wanting a new one. However, my husband and I both work 60 to 70 hours a week and the kids at school, so I felt it was too much responsibility right then. But since the craziness started, the kids went to online learning for the rest of the school year, and my husband is working from home, so we started considering it. This last week, a friend of my daughter's was told that they had to find homes for their cats. They live in the country and had several, most under a year old. We agreed to meet one to see what we think. We all instantly fell in love with this 6-month-old calico. However, since my husband and I are both still working long hours, his is just from home, but he's still busy. I told my daughter it would be her responsibility to take care of her. She agreed. The name the cat had already been given was Turtle. Not my favorite name for a cat, but my daughter liked it, so I was fine with it. However, my husband hates the name. He decided Paisley was a better name. I actually like this name somewhat better. I think if he would have went to my daughter and said, "How about Paisley for a name?" I think she might have gone for it and there would be no issue. Instead, he said, "Turtle is a stupid name. Her name is Paisley." That led to them arguing. Finally, I just got them to agree to just each calling her what they want. She's a cat. She doesn't care. And actually, all I've heard anyone call her is Kitty. So then Friday, I call to make her a vet appointment. When the vet asks her name, I say Turtle. Vet laughs, says okay, cat named Turtle, got it. My husband heard this, and when I hung up, he stated I'm disrespecting him by taking her side. He said I'm letting a kid make the rules and insisted I change the name with the vet. I feel we told her the cat was her responsibility, and with that, I feel she had a right to her choice of name. I refused to change the name with the vet. Now he's been mad at me for 2 days. Am I the jerk for not taking his side and changing the name? Entitled mom wouldn't give me my diploma because I didn't get her a rose. I had a weird upbringing that I've tried to explain a couple times, but it's so complicated. I couldn't get it concise enough and I had to erase it. I think I'll just stick to this one story for now, and if you want to hear more about what my family believed, you can ask me any questions you have and I can answer them in the comments. Even so, this is going to be a long, crazy story, so brace yourself. My mom was what's known as a covert narcissist. That's where they are super sweet and wonderful whenever someone else is around, but at home, their true colors rip through their mask and they demand that the world revolve around them. Part of what we believed required our family to have as many kids as possible, and as the oldest daughter, it was my job to take care of them all. I meal planned, cooked, cleaned, and even homeschooled my youngest siblings, all while trying to get through my own school books by myself. My mom wouldn't let me study unless all the other housework was done first. When it came time for me to graduate high school, our church organized a group of us homeschooled kids who were all graduating at the same time and put together a ceremony like the ones regular schools have. I was very involved for the first few months. I illustrated a cookbook we were selling and went to all the fundraisers, but after a while, I decided I didn't agree with a lot of what the group was doing and asked my parents if I could pull out of the project and just have a small ceremony at home, like we had always talked about. They both heard my reasons and agreed, saying they were proud of my maturity and willingness to stand alone for what was right. The day of the graduation came, and we went to support our friends. During the ceremony, each student gave their mother a rose and a hug on stage, and it was very sweet. I had no reason to believe there was anything wrong until we got home. My mom immediately called me back into her room. My dad was standing there, but he wasn't really the leader in our house, so he didn't say anything the whole time. My mom told me she was humiliated when she saw all the other mothers get roses and said I cheated her out of the honor and recognition she deserved for teaching me everything I know. Her exact words were, "A graduation ceremony is not about the students. It's about the teachers and how hard they worked to get those students where they are today." I didn't dare contradict her, but in my head I was thinking, what are you talking about? You haven't been my teacher since I was 11. She would always just buy me books, and that was it. I had to find time to read them, take tests, and grade myself all on my own. She would even make me take tests over and over until I got an A. With math, that was a lot of trying and failing. I didn't even know the real cutoff for failing a test was a D until I got married and moved out. At the time of this conversation, I still had a couple chapters in my last math book I needed to finish, but a lot of my other homeschool friends said they had the same thing and it was normal. My mom finished by saying, "I just looked at your math book and you still have 2 chapters left to go, so you haven't even earned this yet. Since you denied me the honor I deserved tonight, I will be withholding your diploma also. You don't even need it since you won't be going to college. Just finish your book and you will just be done with school." I tried to remind her that she agreed to let me sit out of the graduation ceremony, but she said, "I know I did, but when I saw how all the other mothers were being honored like that, I realized that wasn't your decision to make, and I felt robbed. It wasn't about you. It was about me as both your mother and your teacher." I asked her to at least not tell anyone that I didn't have a diploma, and she said what she always said when I asked that kind of thing. "If you don't want people to know what you did, don't do it." She dismissed me, and I ran to my room and cried. I was embarrassed and worried about what my friends would think if they found out. But I couldn't stay in my room for very long because my mom soon noticed I was gone and called me back downstairs to make dinner. She never approved of anyone being emotional. I went the next 12 years carefully guarding my secret that I didn't have a diploma, and even my husband didn't know until one day my dad called me. He and my mom had gotten a divorce when she left him and all my siblings for another man that year. After the drama settled, the whole family was a lot happier without my mom around, and my dad had been going through all the old files, getting everything in order for their new, free life, when he found something he thought I would like to have. It was my diploma and my high school transcript. He sent me a picture of them both, and I just broke down crying right there on the phone. He apologized for not standing up for me back then, and I told him I understood and forgave him. My mom mistreated him too, and he was just trying to get through life like all of us. He couldn't accept that. He said, as my dad, it was his job to protect me, and he failed. We had a long talk about all the things my mom did to me, and I was surprised to hear that my dad was largely unaware of most of them. He got really angry on the phone and kept apologizing for not being more aware and present in my life. He was in the military, so he was gone a lot. It was a wonderful talk, and we both cried a ton. He sent me the diploma and the transcript in the mail, and I cried again when I finally held them in my hands. I used them to get a job last year at a daycare, and it felt amazing. Am I the jerk for not defending my husband when my parents berated him? So, what happened has caused a huge conflict, and most of my family members have pretty much cut contact with me. I'm female, 28, and my sister, who's 25, miscarried last week. It was so horrible for her and her husband, as this is the second time that this has happened to them. My sister spent the following days at her home, feeling exhausted and depressed, and I called her to check on her, but she kept the conversation short. My mom was very concerned and decided to invite her and her husband for dinner on Sunday to get her to feel better, and also since the family wanted to see my sister and support her. So mom thought having a family dinner was a good idea. On Thursday, I found out I was pregnant, but I didn't tell anyone, thinking the time wasn't right, so only me and my husband knew about it. We got there. My husband was surprised to see the whole family was there, saying he didn't expect that. I sat with my sister before dinner. She looked like a mess. We cried together, and I absolutely felt sorrow and how she was struggling with her loss. After that, we all started having dinner. While everyone was talking casually, my husband called for everyone's attention, said he wanted to take a minute to announce that I was pregnant and that we had found out this week. I was shocked, speechless. Everyone started congratulating me while my sister got up and literally walked outside. Her husband followed her. My parents were the only ones who didn't move. They just stared at me and my husband disgusted. A few minutes later, her husband came back inside to get her bag and they left. Things got quiet. My aunt, cousin, and her family started leaving. I wanted to leave, but my dad told us to stay because he wanted to talk to my husband. I knew there was going to be a crap show since my husband has a history with him. My father lost it. He yelled at my husband and called what he did insensitive and inappropriate. My husband wanted me to defend him, but I just sat there while my dad was raising his voice for being disrespectful and inconsiderate and a jerk. My husband responded with bringing up past issues, saying they were playing favorites, and told them that because of this, they will never see his kid. He got kicked out by my dad. We got home. My husband blew up on me for not defending him, but I yelled at him that what he did was very wrong and that my sister will most likely never talk to me again, thinking I was behind this. We argued for a few minutes, and he told me to buzz off and slam the door to go be with his buddies after I told him to fix his anger issues. Info. I told my husband to not tell anyone about my pregnancy, but he thought since the whole family was there that this was a perfect time. He completely disregarded everyone's feelings. I know he's my husband, but they're my family, and they were hurt. My dad was hurt. Well, what do you think? Should OP have stood up for her husband or not? Please let us know. I think leaving him might be a better option. Even I wouldn't do something like he did. Karen takes down my signs so her kid will have no competition in dog walking. I'm a 14-year-old male, and this happened about 2 years ago. Here's some background knowledge. So I wanted to make a little extra money because I was into stocks, and I wanted to make money for my future, invest in stocks, buy a car that would last me past high school, etc. I wanted to start making money by dog walking. I started making posters that showed why I wanted to make money, and I had a dog. He was a medium dog, but I was a relatively strong person and I could handle most sizes of dogs. So I started printing about 30 copies of posters and started putting them on electrical posts every 200 feet or so. It took about an hour considering I didn't bike. I just followed my daily routine for the next few days, waiting to get a call from someone to ask about my dog walking. A few days after I put up the posters, I took my dog on a long walk. So I was walking, and just after about 30 minutes walking from my house, there were no posters. I swear that I put them up. I continued my walk and found less dog posters around this area. After about an hour walk, I got home and I looked at where I had mapped out where I would put the posters. There were supposed to be posters there. I called my friend, who lives near there, and asked him to watch the posters and tell me if there was someone taking them down and when. He said sure. Later that day, he called me back asking where the posters are. Me. Oops, I forgot to mention that I would be putting them up early tomorrow before school. This was at about 10 p.m., and my parents wouldn't let me put them up when I was 12, even if I was almost 13. Friend. Okay, well, see you then, I guess. Me. See you. Friend. Wait, I forgot to say that there was someone, entitled Mom, standing near one of the posts for about 20 minutes. Oh, and I've seen her before. I think she lives near me. Me. Okay, well, that's random. Bye. Friend. See ya. The next day, I put up the posters and walked to school with my friend because I was already over there. It's a normal day at school. I tell my friends about it, and my friend exaggerates about the person standing by the post doing nothing. After about 10 minutes after I get home, I get a call from my friend, he lives further from the school, saying the posters have been taken down again. I'm annoyed at this point, so bike over to his house and put one poster right across from his window. We head in and start playing Minecraft. I'm not paying much attention as I'm watching the poster. There's someone, maybe in their mid-40s, approaching the poster. I tell my friend, and we wait until they are in arm reach of the poster. They might just be looking at it. Friend. I think that's the person that was standing at the poster earlier. Me. Okay, let's go over to them. We approach the entitled mom as she turns back and gives us the eye. My friend and I quickly act like we were just taking a walk. Friend. Yup, it's the person that was standing at the post earlier. Me. Okay, we should approach her. I'll do the talking. As we approach her, she turns again, and this time has the poster in her hand with a firm grip. Me. Hello, are you interested in that? Entitled mom huffs and turns again. She was clearly in a bad mood. I say it again, but a little different. Me. Are you interested in that? I put up those posters, and I can walk your dog if you're interested. Entitled mom. I don't want you to walk a single dog. I don't know what she meant by that. She starts ripping off half the poster with the other half stuck on. Me. What are you doing? Well, since my son is going to start walking his dog soon, he wanted to make some money, so I wanted to be perfect for him. Me. Well, there's enough space for both of us. No. Me. Well, even so, you can't take down my posters. I'm also trying to make money. Well, that doesn't matter. If your parents can afford to live in this neighborhood, then you are fine, she complains. Then I remember this very distinctively when she said, anyways, you're too fat and tall to walk a dog. You couldn't walk a puppy. Ha! She said the ha like Marge from The Simpsons. I was really annoyed at this point. At the time, I got mad really easily. I ranted. Well, even if my parents can't afford to live here, you don't know anything about me, and you assume that I'm fat. You are a slob and a terrible parent. I bet that you've been spoiled your whole life. I know I contradicted myself multiple times in that sentence, but I was mad. My parents could afford to live in the neighborhood. We live in the Bay Area, which generally costs more than most places, but my family didn't have a nice house. We just lived in a nice neighborhood. As I was not fat, I am really tall, and I have a bit of a large stomach and it sticks out a bit. But I don't have an eating problem. I'm just built this way. Entitled mom. I'm going to keep ripping your posters off so that my 9-year-old can walk dogs. Friend. Lady, stop. My friend spent a lot of time doing this, and if he wants to make money, he can. You are doing a bad thing. My friend was very logical, but we're 12, so we look like complete idiots. At this point, friend's mom came outside and yelled from across the street, "Stop being a jerk, entitled mom, and harassing my son and his friend." His mom was more like me, but an adult. Me. Entitled mom, please stop. The reason I want to make money is to invest in my future. Shut up. You just want to spend it on food, and we all know that. I was done with her craziness. I went back inside with my friend, and we continued to play Minecraft. I would look back over at the argument in hand. From the looks of it, it seems like friend's mom was just being mean at this point, not even trying to fix the problem. I was fine with that. His mom let me stay for dinner, and turns out she said some pretty funny things to this lady. After dinner, I took my backpack and was going to go home when I realized I brought an extra poster. My friend and I put up the poster and giggled. I didn't care much about this because it was a great story to tell people even if I was mad. This is what I heard about the conversation that the ladies had. Friend's mom said that her parenting skills were the same as an animal who leaves their kid at birth. Entitled mom just kept ranting about how the whole world is crazy and no one can tell when someone is trying to be nice, and how we were evil to even suggest that I was equal to her son. This lady clearly needs some help. or just someone to snap her back into a realistic state. I feel bad for her that she acts like that on a regular basis, but at the same time, it's not okay whatsoever, and whatever happened to her, she deserved. My friend says he doesn't see her much anymore, just on holidays. I think she probably moved away and has family or friends that they visit during the holidays. I made about $600 before I stopped. I spent about $150 towards stocks, $50 towards money for going downtown with friends, and about $400 went towards a new graphics card for my failing one, but I bought the graphics card about 5 months ago. Ex-employee chews out a Karen. I work at a large hardware store as an appliance associate. We wear orange aprons, so I'll let you figure out where it is. Now, I don't usually work in flooring, but the regular flooring guy was on break. So after the nice lady asked me to get something down from the overhead for her, I headed over there to help. Seeing Karen and Adam standing at the carpet cutting machine, not together, I tell them I'll come help them as soon as I was done with the nice lady. After about 2 minutes, I returned to the carpet cutting machine to find Karen gone, leaving me to talk Adam through what would be best for him to get for his project. Just as I'm getting ready to roll out the carpet we decided on, Karen comes back stomping. Karen, there you are. Adam, it's all right, man. Take care of her first. I'm not in any rush. Me, how can I help you, ma'am? I need 60 feet of AstroTurf. How hard is that? I start rolling out her carpet. You should have just done that to begin with. Are you stupid or something? All of you people are lazy, good-for-nothing jerks. Adam, ma'am, there's no reason to talk to him like that. He's just doing his job. Karen, not fast enough. Not that it's any of your business. You need to stay out of our conversation. Adam, obviously done with her BS. Look, he's just trying to do his job, and you're acting like a jerk. A verbal smackdown ensues until my manager, we'll call her Debbie, walks over to intervene. Manager, is there a problem? Karen, I was just having a conversation with this lady, points to me, and he started being rude. You need to handle it. Manager, ma'am, he doesn't work here. I don't know what you want me to tell him. My manager proceeds to try and talk the woman down while I roll and cut her carpet. By the time I had her carpet ready, her husband had arrived with a cart to load it up. Then, thinking everything was over, my manager walks away and I turn to Adam to get his carpet. That's when I realized that Karen had been telling her husband what happened. Husband storming out to Adam. Did you call my wife a jerk? Adam shrugging. I said she was acting like a jerk. There's no reason to talk to associates the way she did. Husband, you need to learn some respect. You can't talk to customers like that. Adam, I am a customer, which means I can say the things everyone else is thinking but can't say. Then the husband tried to fight Adam before the manager came back and escorted the couple to the front. Come to find out, Adam used to work there and loved the opportunity to tell customers everything he had never been able to when he worked there. I've never been so satisfied. We don't give trophies here, lady. I taught martial arts several years ago, and I've seen my fair share of entitled parents. However, this lady and her kids are forever burned into my brain. I taught at a regular studio, but on the side to market the studio, I would run a 6-week after-school parks and rec program. In my program, I taught forms. There would be a couple days of sparring and board-breaking basics. I think some parents and kids come in thinking they're going to be these MMA cage fighters, but I digress. Looking back, I think the most entitled parents were ones that put their kids in that program. I was starting a new session, and this lady, entitled mom, brought her 2 sons, who were around 6 and 12 years old, to the class. I greet them. Hey, I'm SoCal Courtney. Welcome to Parks and Rec class. What are your names? Entitled mom. Where is the instructor? Me. I am. I teach over at X Martial Arts Studio on Y Street. I was expecting a man. We really want a man to teach our sons. Which she turns to her kids and tells them that I fight like a girl. While this was very annoying, I thought maybe the kids would be okay, or maybe she was just brash. I was wrong. The 12-year-old on day 1 wanted to spar me. I told him that isn't what we're going to do, and that we would spar later in the class session once everyone learned the basics. I invited entitled mom to stay to watch the classes so I could ensure her that I was capable and a very qualified instructor, thinking this would put her mind at ease. For the next 6 weeks, I had to deal with the fighting like a girl, or where is a male instructor comments. I ensured that while we do have male instructors, I'm the only one that runs this program, and at our studio, there's a teaching rotation, so everyone gets an opportunity to teach. However, I am the one that oversees the other instructors. Oddly enough, these folks signed up at our studio. On the first day, entitled mom, her 2 sons, and an older sister walk in. I greet them just like I would any student and ask for information to set up accounts. I'm getting things squared away, and the sister, who was maybe my age, I was in my early 20s, made the comment that I've heard time and time again. Sister, I bet you hit like a girl. At this time, I was very much over the comments. I get it the first couple of times, but it gets old quickly, so I said back to her, me, I have a waiver that you can sign if you'd like, and we can spar. She declined and laughed it off, saying she was joking. Fine. Entitled Mom goes on and on about male instructors, how her husband only wants her kids to be taught by men. Her youngest son was the sweetest, kindest kid. I really enjoyed teaching him, and I think that he would have gone far if they would have stayed with the studio. However, the 12-year-old was an entitled kid and had this chip on his shoulder, thinking that he was owed the world. I tried to empathize. I've seen kids from all backgrounds and walks of life, but this kid made it difficult. Over the next several weeks, I would only pair entitled kid, 12, with male opponents because I noticed that when he would fight with the girls, he would be much more aggressive. He started to get more and more warnings, and it was just a bad time. Entitled Mom advises that if I were a male instructor, this wouldn't be happening. I told her that this wasn't the case. To be honest, I just wanted to say that I think there was a lot of discipline issues at home. Finally, tournament time rolls around. Entitled Mom approaches me and asks about trophies. At our tournaments, we just have gold, silver, and bronze medals. That's it. She started to demand that we start giving trophies. I told her that while some studios and larger tournaments do have trophies, we just don't provide them at this time. Entitled Mom demands that we present her kids with trophies that she planned on buying for them. I told her that I'm absolutely not going to do that. She told me I was crushing her kids' hearts. Eventually, I just tell her, ma'am, for the last time, I'm not presenting your kids with a trophy. It isn't fair to the others who have worked just as hard. If you want to give them trophies on your own time, outside of this tournament, you can do that. Entitled Mom and co. roll up to the tournament. Entitled Kid, 12, loses. She brought those trophies with her, left us with a bad Yelp review, and dipped from the studio. We never saw them again. Don't know what happened to them. I hope they found a sole male instructor, and I hope that the youngest son kept up with it, and I hope that he hasn't adapted the same attitude that his parents and older brother have. I don't teach anymore, but I hope that my kids get into it. Lots of good memories. But man, some parents, am I right? Speaking of martial arts, have you ever done any martial arts? And if so, what kind? Please let us know. I'm a 3rd-degree black belt in Karen Fu. But I need to use your computer. A Tale of My Mother. For cathartic purposes and your amusement, I should like to tell you a story some 20 years old about the mine of neurosis that was, and likely still is, my mother. She was a special kind of woman, as you shall see. One of the ways she manifested her deep resentment of her choices to marry and have children young was her absolute conviction that she owned her kids and all that they owned. Particularly impressively, she owned her kids and all that they owned after she kicked the elder of the two out of her home permanently when the elder reached the mature and self-sufficient age of 14 years old. The kicking out is relevant, the age is not. The elder moved in with his father's mother, a sweet old woman just unknowingly beginning the symptoms of Parkinson's disease and needing more help and company than expected. That was nice. The family took her there to live with her grandmother, and her uncle gave her old computer parts from his side business of upgrading small business machines. The hard drive was already wiped, and let her build her first computer for schoolwork, read video games, perhaps being 14 is relevant after all, and bought her internet access as well. It was nice. While this was happening, the mother in question had discovered eBay, the wonderful world of eBay, where she could buy anything she wanted and experience excitement for once in her monotonous life. It worked well with her immense store card debt and huge quantities of free time. She became hooked. She replaced her whole wardrobe of clothes and progressed to filling her very poorly kept and dirty home with new things. One day, the worst happened. The internet went down. Oh no, the horror. With no internet, how would she buy whatever it was that was finishing today? Terrible, no. But wait, there was an answer for this problem. The teenage daughter she had kicked out of her home a mere 3 weeks ago had an internet connection and a computer. Yes, that would solve the problem. And so she called up her daughter and told her, I'm coming over to use your computer. It was this day that her daughter realized something. That something was she was sick of this woman's crap. No, she said. It was actually terrifying because she hadn't said no so abruptly to her mother since she was a toddler. The lady was terrifying when she was angry, quite possibly because of the missing and horribly discolored teeth and terrible breath when she got in one's face, but the unhinged rage helped too. I have an auction finishing, said mother. No, said the daughter again. 'Cause we are doing this. This is a thing now. I am coming over to use your computer, Mother said firmly. I won't open the door, said her daughter. You will. I am leaving now, the mother growled menacingly. This was before any of the family had mobile phones. They were around, but terribly expensive, and so both only had the landline. She hung up. And so the daughter locked the door. A door in a frame reinforced with steel sometime earlier after grandmother was robbed by a charity who look after the elderly. This is relevant. She also got a weapon and went to sit on the stairs opposite the door. Their homes were a 20-minute walk from each other. The weapon in question was a reenactment Norse sword, because what kind of child with a mother like this grows up normal? So she sat at the door and she waited, and her mother arrived and rang the bell. No one answered. She knocked. No one answered. Then she began to scream to be let in. No answer. And then, screaming about missed auctions, she began to beat on the door. She kicked it. Finally a response. I'm not opening the door. She got angrier and screamed louder and kicked harder. I will call the police, her daughter told her, and thus the dragon was defeated. She was momentarily enraged, but it dawned on her, apparently, that this might actually happen, and so she angrily stormed home to call her husband and relate the story of how their selfish kid lost her an eBay auction by refusing to let her use her computer, and even threatened to call the police on her. Her husband was deeply angry at their daughter. Because how dare she say no to her mother who birthed her? Her grandmother, by contrast, was relieved that this woman had finally been told no and was kept out of her house. Their daughter remained unimpressed with her mother, and this was the story of the last time my mother ever failed to believe me when I said no. To this day, I've never been able to use that sword outside of setup fights. We haven't spoken in 10 years, except for one slip-up when she got a new Facebook account that wasn't blocked. Clarence Karen, a special breed. In college, I was working at a bookstore. The company was Christian-owned, and they made a pretty big deal about it, and all their merch was geared towards that clientele. So one fall, they were having a huge sale. A lot had been moved to clearance in our store, and several bonus coupons were in that month's mail-out. This woman, entitled woman, came in with her husband. They had filled, I kid you not, 12 handheld baskets with junk, and I mean junk. A lot of it was clearanced because it was damaged or broken in some minor way. I patiently rang them all up, secretly excited how the sale would look on my numbers for the week. I made small talk about the weather and her items. Oh, this candle smells nice, like usual, and I thought all was going great. At the end of the purchase, I asked if she had any coupons. She handed me a 20% off her entire purchase and I scanned it. It brought the total down from over $500 to about $450 because it only applied to the non-clearance items, as explained in bold letters below the big 20% text. Entitled lady, that coupon is for 20% off. You didn't take 20% off. Me, the coupon can only take 20% off the regularly priced items, ma'am. I hurried to scroll back through the running list on my screen. It looks like it took 20% off all of the non-clearance items. Entitled lady huffs and digs in her bag, producing the sale ad and handing me several more coupons. One was able to take an additional 10% off a book. It was book specific, and another took a few dollars off, but her total was still well over $400. Another coupon was a buy one get one free. Buy 2 clearance items under $5, get the third free. I looked back over her purchase and saw she had about 30 $5 or less candles and other smaller items like bookmarks, highlighters, etc. Me, I can scan this coupon, but it'll only save you about $5. If you'd like, I can take off most of the items that are under $5. But I want to buy them all. Me, I understand that. Let me explain. I know how coupons work. You don't need to get snotty with me. I sighed and scanned the coupon. Why did that only take off $5? I bought more than 3 items, young lady. I plastered on my teacher face and smiled. Me, as I was trying to explain, it's only good for a total of 3 items per transaction. If you'd like, I can remove the other items from this transaction and then scan the rest up separately. That way you're still getting the same amount for free. I should probably mention that doing so was way against company policy, but as my assistant manager was always saying, we don't get paid enough to care when people are mad over $5. Just make it work. Entitled lady, so why won't it work on this transaction? Scan it again. You must not have done it right. Me, I can scan it again, but I can see that it won't work no matter how many times I scan it. The coupons that work and the items they apply to turn green, and if it doesn't work, a big error message comes up and it'll say in red that it doesn't apply with a brief explanation of why. The system is saying it won't work because it has already been applied to qualifying items. Lose the attitude. I don't deserve this. I'm spending hundreds of dollars in here. Fix it. At this point, I wanted to throw my computer screen at her, but I know manager definitely gets paid enough to care about that. Instead, I plastered on another smile. Me. I'll scan the coupon again, and if you'd like to step to the side here, I'll show you my screen so you can see that it doesn't work that way no matter how many times I scan it. I'm not going to do your job for you. Make it work. I scanned the coupon again, and surprise, it didn't work. Me. As I've said, it's not going to work this way. Again, I'm more than happy to remove the items from your purchase and ring them out as separate transactions, but I can't make the computer accept the coupon. Well, that's not what I want. I want to buy these items, so I wouldn't have picked them out, would I? Now I'm just done. Me. I found that's why customers generally select items, yes. She blinks at me, and I'm now smiling with true joy. I've managed to silence her for a moment. Me. If you'd like, I can go get my manager and see if he knows anything I don't. I know he doesn't, but I figure I can offer anyway and pass the buck to him. Entitled lady. You should have offered that sooner. Go! As I'm walking to the other side of the checkout kiosk, I hear her say to husband, hopefully manager is more competent than this jerk. I go up to the manager and he leans in and I start to explain, but he tells me he's been listening to the whole thing and I'm right. Don't worry. We were pretty close friends outside of work, and he knew I didn't mind confrontation at all, but he was in law school, so I knew entitled lady had it coming in some way. I handed manager the coupon and hung back while I labeled new merch. Manager tells the entitled lady, what seems to be the problem, ma'am? Entitled lady is now in full-on Karen mode. That cashier is inept, and because of her, I won't be buying anything. She should be fired. I expect better service from a Christian store. Manager, I'm sorry to hear you aren't satisfied with our procedures. May I? Entitled lady cuts him off and Rage explains what's happened, surprisingly accurately, and manager nods along sympathetically. Entitled lady, and your employee said you might be able to get the coupon to work, so I expect you to. I did the math, and this shouldn't be more than $200, so I won't be paying more than that. I trust that you can see to it that I get what I want. That's your job. Manager, I will certainly do everything I can. Manager scans the coupon, and once again, it's rejected. Let me call her over here. He waves me over and asks, which way were you scanning the coupon? Instinctively, I swiped my hand in front of the scanner like I was holding a coupon, left to right. Manager, well, that's exactly what you're supposed to do. Now I can tell he's messing with her. Let me try it this way. He scans it right to left. Nope, still won't work. Let me see. Meanwhile, entitled lady has this smug grin like I'm about to be taught a lesson. Manager inputs the code manually and turns the screen all the way around, showing her the error. Manager, if you'll see here, this coupon has already been applied to as much merchandise as corporate allows. So, entitled lady then turns and storms out of the store. This store is pathetic. I won't ever be back. If a customer wants to use a coupon, you should let them. Husband follows her to the car, agreeing with her. When the door closes, manager turns to me and we're both nervous relief laughing, grateful the store is otherwise empty. Manager sent me to lunch, saying we'd reshelf her stuff in a bit. Halfway through my break, he comes in the back room. Manager, guess who just came back? Apparently, entitled lady sent husband in to buy everything full price, no coupon for anything. I worked at this store for another year, and she did the same thing about 6 months later. I saw her coming toward my register at the same time manager did, caught his eye, and went, nope, yours, and ducked under the counter to run to the back of the store. Manager wasn't happy with me, but after we both had left that day, he said, I couldn't say this on the clock, but I was only mad about earlier because you ran before I could. Best manager ever. Entitled woman takes my niece's baby Yoda I made for her. Recently, my sister and her husband have really come to like Baby Yoda from The Mandalorian. I crochet and made them a Baby Yoda, something my 4-year-old niece liked as well. I ended up making another Baby Yoda in purple, my niece's favorite color specifically for her. Yesterday, I was babysitting my niece and we went to Walmart to pick up some snacks and ingredients for dinner. My niece insisted on bringing her Baby Yoda with us. It happened fast while I was picking through bags of spinach. My niece, who was sitting in the shopping cart, began screaming and crying. Despite not having any kids yet, I'm more than a little of a mama bear and instantly abandoned the spinach to check on her. My niece was halfway out of the cart, still screaming, pointing at a woman who was walking away with a very familiar purple baby Yoda in her cart, heading towards the registers. I picked up my niece and stormed after this woman, abandoning my shopping cart as she turned into a register. She had put her things on the checkout conveyor belt when I got there, most of her things already scanned, and she was trying to discuss prices for the baby Yoda. It's not in the best of shape, and the price indicated it was $12.99. Could you give me a discount? I marched over, my sobbing niece in my arm, and snatched the baby Yoda from the surprised clerk who was checking for a tag. The entitled woman screeched as she grabbed at the toy as well. How dare you! I'm buying this for my daughter. She loves purple, and those other ones are all green. This belongs to my niece. I made it for her, I snarled. Liar! You're just angry I got to it first. A manager must have been attracted by the noise of screams because he approached, a less than pleased look on his face. Is there something wrong here? The entitled woman pointed at me with her free hand. This lady is trying to take this doll I'm trying to buy for my daughter. I was still trying to keep a grip on the baby Yoda. I told you, I made this. I doubt the Yodas sold here are made from yarn. The manager called security after a moment of trying to mediate, and I was forced to let go of the Yoda to talk to the guard. Luckily, I like to take pictures of my projects that I finish, so it only took a moment for me to pull out my phone and bring up a picture of the baby Yoda when I had finished it. We both turned back to the cash register, and my niece began to cry again when we saw the woman was gone and the manager approached us with a hard look. I realize that those toys are very popular, but you shouldn't try to steal one of a specific color from someone. I held up my phone, picture still up, and saw the man's face drain of color when he saw the toy in an environment that was very much not his store, but the damage was already done. He had sold my niece's toy to the entitled woman and she had left. Needless to say, I'm never going back to that Walmart, and my niece is still upset about her purple baby Yoda being stolen. I'm making another one for her currently, one that'll have her name stitched onto the back, so this will never happen again. Karen, why are you crying? I'm just so sad. It's okay. She's gonna make her another one. No, that's not it. Well, what's wrong? For the first time, Karen has actually got what she deserved. It makes me so happy. Oh, forget you. Am I the jerk for keeping a lady's food since she didn't tip me for flirting with her husband? So I work for a food delivery service. Not one of the big well-known ones, but one that's only in certain areas of my state. The area I mostly get deliveries in is a smallish new town, just so you understand why this was even possible. So a couple weeks ago, I delivered food to this lady's house. The husband was apparently grabbing a package off of the porch when I arrived. We ended up chatting a bit and were joking around with each other, just enjoying each other's company for a few minutes. Shortly after leaving, I got a nasty message about if I expect tips, not to be acting like a jerk and hitting on other people's husbands, and she left me a $2 tip, the lowest amount allowed. It really sucked because since this is a small town still being developed, there's not really any food places nearby, meaning it took close to an hour of driving to get their food to them. Anyways, about a week later, I got a delivery to the same house. I figured I probably wouldn't be getting a tip again since she could definitely see it was me, and considering the lady even insulted me last time, I said forget this and kept a few parts of their meal. Figured I'd enjoy lunch on her to make up for the lack of tips and the rude attitude. Anyways, I was talking to my friends about this, and some of them said it did sound like I was hitting on the husband and I shouldn't have done that, and that I shouldn't have kept their food this time because I kind of deserved her stiffing me and sending me that message. A few of them are defending me, but the others thought I was being a jerk. So Reddit, what do you think? Am I the jerk? Edit to add, because for some reason I can't reply anymore, and these are common questions. I didn't think what I said/did was really flirting or hitting on him. I casually complimented him and his muscles and said something that was meant to mean his wife was lucky. I considered the $2 tip not tipping because the app doesn't let you get tipped less than that. In certain situations, the minimum required tip is actually higher. Also, we get paid a certain percentage of the delivery fee plus tips, and the delivery fee isn't very high. There was no manager for me to report her to because it's just a food delivery app. They place the order, we pick it up, and actually order it too and deliver it. It tells you the address it's going to after you pick up the food, so I couldn't just reject the delivery. Edit 2, because people keep asking about it. I did playfully touch his arm, but just for a second, and the something that was meant to mean his wife was lucky was something on the lines of, "Too bad you're married. I'd love to have someone like you as my husband," but in a joking way. I wasn't meaning it to be flirty. My friends thought that was too much, so I didn't want to include it, but it keeps getting brought up. Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk for what she did or not? Please let us know. I dare someone to come to our house and try that on you, Mr. Reddit. Entitled mom pushes me away from my family in my wheelchair. A few years ago, I was living in Vegas, and an entitled mom literally wheeled me away from my family. I have a number of health issues, and after a few botched surgeries and neurological damage, I was bedridden. I never left my house/bed except for doctor's appointments. I hadn't been out at all for 2.5 years. I had worked really hard on my daily physical therapy, and my balance had greatly improved. My family came out for a visit. My husband was stationed at Nellis Air Force Base, and I was so excited to surprise them with my improvements. I could stand and walk, and was actually wearing pants. To celebrate, I wanted to go see the fountains at the Bellagio. For most people, this is a nice outing, but for me, this was years in the making. I was nervous I might get overtired and lost in the fast-moving crowds, so we had to bring my wheelchair. We knew the schedule for the fountains and arrived super early to secure a spot in front where I could see from my chair. It was such an important moment for all of us. We lined up by the fence, and no sooner did the show start, I felt this jerking on my wheelchair. I thought maybe someone had tripped on me, and I immediately looked up to apologize. I was pretty self-conscious and ashamed of being out in a wheelchair in such a big crowd. When I glanced up to apologize, I see this lady with a small kid on her hip, using one hand to literally pull me away from the fence. Because she was only using one hand, she spun me completely around to face the street. I was stunned. I could hear everyone reacting to the fountain show, and here I was, looking dumb, awkwardly facing a bunch of strangers. I yelled for my husband, but he couldn't hear me over the noise. I looked behind me, and this woman had plopped her kid up onto the guardrail, never made eye contact with me, never said one word to me, and had treated me like a piece of luggage. I tried to stand up, but the people around me had crowded me so much I didn't have room to push my chair back enough. I desperately looked around at the strangers in front of me, hoping that someone who had seen what had happened would help. It then dawned on me that this was a huge family/friend group. They all began nudging me aside, further and further away from my family. It all happened so fast. I found myself pushed into the walking area where people who weren't stopping to watch the fountain show were quickly trying to walk past. People couldn't see me through the crowd and were stumbling over/past me. I couldn't see my family anymore and was trying hard to push myself up out of my wheelchair the way my physical therapist had taught me. I felt someone grabbing my chair again and I panicked. I started yelling, "No, please no," and then realized it was my husband. He had glanced to check on me and to take a picture of me being out for the first time, and I was gone. He had to fight his way through the crowd, the same family group, to find me. I burst into tears. I didn't know why, but it was like all the trauma from the last few years hit me all at once. I told him they had pushed me away, and after putting it together, my husband was mad. He turned to this group of people and demanded to know who had pushed me away. By this time, the fountain show was pretty much over. The group initially just ignored my husband like they had me, until I pointed out the woman with her kid as the culprits. My family confronted her, nicely I might add, and tried to explain why a wheelchair is an extension of a person, etc. She at first pretended like she didn't speak English, but I had heard them talking amongst themselves in English while they pushed me into the walking area, and I told my husband as much. She then gave up that act and told my family about how I was in their way and probably couldn't see anyway, and the man with her claimed in a raised voice that in their country they don't take their shameful family members out in public, to which my husband responded, "If that were true, none of you would be here." I was even more shocked by his last sentence than being wheeled away. I managed the courage to tell them what he had said was BS and that I'm sure people in your country are actually kind and would be proud if I was their daughter. I remember the exact words I said because later I was very proud that I stood up to them. The group sort of collectively scoffed, spoke to one another quickly in what I think was Hindi, and slowly walked away as if nothing had happened. We didn't stay for the next show because I just wanted to go home. I don't know which is worse, pushing a disabled person in a wheelchair out of your way or wrongly painting your countrymen in such a way. Am I the jerk for taking my friend and her kids on vacation with me instead of my sister and her kids? This happened when I was 24, and my sister is still mad about it and thinks I was the jerk. I just want to see if I am or not. Long story short, I won a raffle at my job for an all-expenses-paid family vacation. It wasn't super fancy prize to Disneyland or anything like that. It was just a nice 3-day stay at this little beach house inn place. It was for 4 people. I asked new boyfriend at the time to go, but he couldn't because of school. I told nobody I won, but when I came down to visit my family for the weekend, my sister was there with my niece and nephew, who are the 2 brattiest kids I've met, thanks to sister not disciplining them ever. I love them, but she lets them get into everything and never watches them unless someone, me or our mom, yells at her to get off her butt and watch them. Visiting is always a chore because I end up watching them to give our mom a break. It's pathetic. I'd considered inviting them to come before I arrived, but the longer I was there, the more I hated the idea. By the time I was packing up to go home, I knew I wasn't inviting them. She dumped them on me the entire time, like usual, and I knew if they came, it would turn into me babysitting them while she had a vacation. So I didn't mention it. Next day, I told my friend Megan, because she has 2 kids, older than Sis's kids and very well behaved, and she's a single working mom who could use the vacation. I offered to invite her along if she would pay for the gas to get us all to/from there, and she happily agreed. We went, had a blast. I got a pretty good tan. We ate lots of buffet food and did fun family-type activities all weekend before coming back. I posted some pics I took. Nothing in your face, just a couple cute ones of me and us on the beach. When I got back, and before lunch even rolled around, sister was blowing up my phone, asking how the heck I could afford a vacation. I told her it was a raffle prize. She asked who won, and I said me. She flipped out, demanding to know why I hadn't invited her. I was honest and said because I didn't want to babysit her kids for the entire vacation. She called me a jerk, said I knew she needed a vacation, and then hung up on me. Later, mom called, asking why I promised niece/nephew I'd take them on vacation. I said I never told them I would. Turns out, sis told them they were all supposed to go on vacation, but I ruined it and now they couldn't. So they cried all day. I explained my side, and mom said I was mean to not invite sister, niece, and nephew, but she dropped it after I said I wasn't babysitting my whole vacation. I would have invited them, but I just didn't want to. Sister thinks family should come before friends. Am I the jerk? Edit. To those feeling sad for my niece and nephew for getting lied to about a vacation, it's all good. I took them to this kids' play place the weekend after my vacation. They ate pizza, played arcade games, got to climb this huge indoor jungle gym thing, and even rode a couple of rides. They had a blast. They forgot all about the beach. Edit 2. To those saying, you should have just lied and said you saved up for the vacation. If I did that, then my sister, who thinks I secretly make 6 figures at my above minimum wage job, would have started hounding me for who knows how long for a loan that I wouldn't ever get back, even if I could afford to give it. It was a lose-lose situation. Edit 3. OMG guys, I didn't force my friend to pay for all the gas like some jerk. She paid for the gas, and I paid for everyone's food and drinks to/from the vacation. We stopped and got breakfast on the way and got lunch on the way back. We took my car there since hers is a gas guzzler and mine isn't. We each decided these things together. Well, what do you think? Should OP have taken her sister and her kids or not? Please let us know. When the AC goes out on a warm, busy Saturday lunch, a server I worked with took the lemons given to him and made lemonade. I worked at a restaurant ages ago with a man I'll call Tom. He worked days and I worked nights, but seemed like a nice guy. The thing about Tom is that he was morbidly obese. I say that not to mock him, but because it's important to the story. One weekend, I picked up a day shift. Tom was working and he had the section next to me. We had over an hour wait for a table and we were in the weeds up to our eyeballs. Not far into our shift, the air conditioner went out. It was already a hot day, so with all those people and with us rushing around, it warmed up quickly. I was on my way to the kitchen when a table flagged me down. It was not my table, but I stopped anyway. The man demanded a manager and I asked what was wrong. He pointed to the end of the table where I could see it was wet. I grabbed the clean towel from the back of my apron, ready to wipe it, but he stopped me. Customer.
Do you know what that is?
Me. Water? Customer.
No, it's sweat. That tub-o-lard of a server has been dripping sweat on our table. When he delivered our food, he also delivered that.
I had noticed that Tom was sweating profusely as he ran around, more so than the rest of us. I myself was sweaty, but it wasn't so bad that I couldn't hide it from my tables. Tom wasn't so lucky. Customer.
This is disgusting.
I had to agree, but at the same time, I felt bad for Tom. It wasn't his fault the air had went out and it was super hot inside. I apologized and went to get the manager. As I was going up the stairs to find him, I saw Tom, who looked frazzled. He was looking at his notepad and missed a step, causing him to stumble. As he did, I noticed a bunch of sweat drip off of his head into the tiled floor. Ugh. The manager looked like he wanted to cry when I told him about Tom's table. He went to the table, hunkered down to their level, and talked quietly, but the customers were not so kind. I could hear snippets of them yelling about germs. Someone mentioned the health board, and it got to the point the bar manager joined them to see if he could help. The adjoining booth's customers were listening in, and I knew that wasn't good. Tom stood at the top of the stairs, watching as his table loudly called him childish names. Finally, they got up and left. Their bill calmed. They had not touched their food. The manager gave gift cards to the tables who had witnessed the chaos, but made it seem as if they were because of the air going out, not the server. At the end of our shift, Tom went into a meeting with the managers. He handed in his stuff and he quit. He was so mortified by what had happened. They begged him to stay. He had been there years, but he was so embarrassed, he simply refused and left without another word. A year later, Tom returned to the restaurant. He had lost over 130 pounds and looked like a totally different man. He told us that day had been his wake-up call. He had not only gone on a diet, but he had gone back to school and was on his way to doing something. I can't recall what field of work he was studying, so he'd never have to wait tables again. He even showed off a tattoo he had gotten on his arm. It was a pig wearing an apron, holding a heavy tray of food. The pig was struggling with the weight of it and was sweating. He said the tattoo reminded him of where he had been and where he'd never go again. All these years later, I barely knew Tom, but I'll surely never forget him. The dozen donuts I've been bringing in every Monday doesn't count as my snack day contribution? Well, I guess I'll have to rectify that. Back in high school, around 2010, I used to work the closing shift at Dunkin' Donuts on Sunday nights. Per company policy, I could box up 2 dozen donuts to bring home with me before throwing the rest out. 1 dozen went to my dad to work in the morning. 1 came with me to school, specifically my Spanish class, which was a pretty small and pretty tight-knit group. Tends to happen when a lot of coursework is practicing conversations with each other. This practice of bringing donuts every Monday sparked an idea in one of my classmates' heads. She's Anne in this story. Since it's so nice to have donuts once a week, we should do a weekly snack day where everyone can bring something in. They decided this would be on Thursday, and I said I'd just continue bringing in donuts every week on Monday as my contribution. Everyone was very okay with this, except for Anne. No. This snack day was Thursday, and if you aren't going to bring in a snack on Thursday, then you aren't welcome to participate. I was pretty upset, but what can you do? It's only 1 snack, 1 time. Then I got to thinking about it. I was only required to bring a snack, not something sweet or delicious, or even palatable. As long as it was edible, then it counted. The next closing shift, I grabbed an extra empty dozen box. I went to the store on Wednesday night and got a 5-pound bag of potatoes. I washed them and put them right in the box, and dropped off the box early in the morning to my Spanish classroom so nobody would get wise to the actual contents. Apparently, the earlier classes had seen the box sitting on a shelf and had told our class that we had donuts. Everyone was excited. I brought them up and put them on top of the Elmo projector, trying my best not to betray the extra heft. They all scurried up excitedly, and Anne herself was the one to open the box. A blank expression turned to raw frustration. "You were supposed to bring a snack today," she protested. "I did," I said, walking up to the box and grabbing a potato, biting into it while making direct eye contact with her. "You don't have to have any if you don't want." Everyone shuffled back to their seats, and Anne tried desperately to grasp a new argument out of thin air, but it was not coming. I finished my potato triumphantly and brought the rest home for my mom after school. The box was checked, and she could not try to exclude me from the weekly snack day anymore. Everyone else in class who thought she was a bit over the top thought the antic was hilarious after they got over the initial disappointment. Edit. The story is real. If you can't fathom someone eating a potato raw out of spite, then I don't know what to tell you, except you should get out more. Speaking of potatoes, what's your favorite way to eat potatoes? Mine's French fries. Please let us know.
Fully loaded baked potatoes, bruh.
Ask me to slow down while driving through my neighborhood? Okay. I live in a very quiet suburban neighborhood with lots of active neighbors. Joggers, bikers, dog walkers, baby strollers, kids playing ball in the streets, etc. The speed limit is 25 miles per hour, but when I see a lot of foot traffic on the sidewalks, I bring it down to 15 or even 10 miles per hour if I see a big group of kids playing out there. There's this sweet group of kids who plays basketball in the middle of the street 8 doors down from my home. When they see cars approaching, they move to the curb and wait for the cars to pass before resuming their game. One day, I was driving home from work, and I saw the kids out playing, and their mother was on the front lawn talking with another adult. I slowed down to 10 miles per hour and went to the complete opposite side of the street as I crept by. A little while later, she knocked on my door and complained about how fast I was driving and that I could have hurt someone. I said, "The speed limit is 25 miles per hour, and I was going 10 miles per hour. How much slower do you want me to go?" She said, "I don't care. Just slow down, or else I'm going to call the police. I have a doorbell camera, so I can see you every time you drive by." "Okay, crazy lady, whatever you say." The next day, the kids were out playing in the street again. I slowly approached, came to a full stop, and then I took my foot off the brakes and let the car crawl at 1 mile per hour. The kids stared at me, all confused, as it took me an entire minute to pass through their makeshift basketball court. I continued to do this a few more times until one day the mother came and knocked on my car window as I was crawling by. I lowered my window and asked if there was a problem. She said, "Why are you going so slow? Are you stalking us?" I said, "No, of course not. You demanded that I slow down, so I am." And I rolled up my window and went on my way. She comes banging on my door again and says, "Don't get smart with me. Now you're going too slow." I said, "Are you saying that going 10 miles per hour is okay now? Because if you don't like it, you can call the police." She huffed and crossed her arms and stomped off my porch. Soldier mistaken for a gas attendant. A little background. This happened about 16 years ago. My cousin was on leave, and since the army base he was currently stationed was about 20 miles away, I was the closest family member to him. We hung out a lot when we were kids, so we'd go do things when he got a weekend or however many days he was allowed. My cousin had the habit of not bothering to change into civilian clothes and just wore his normal fatigues. My cousin had a bit of a way how he reacted to certain types of people. Now this story. Well, we had a fishing trip planned and we took my truck, stopped at a gas station to fill up and grab snacks and drinks. Already had all the fishing gear and camping gear in the back of the truck. The gas station was near 2 hotels. One catered to more of a certain type of people. Anyways, I went inside to get the food as he pumped the gas. I recall hearing a car horn blaring as I paid for my purchases and for the gas. I know there's a pay at the pump, but I feel like getting a receipt. As I came out, there were only 2 vehicles at the pumps. My old truck, and just behind it was a Lexus at the other pump. The older woman, guessing mid-40s, was at the wheel of her car. One hand hitting the horn while her left arm was flailing out the open car window. Between car horn blasts, she kept yelling, "Attendant! Attendant!" She had one of those accents that seemed to be a little snobby. I saw my cousin just wave at her and raise his hands to his ears as if to suggest he could not hear her. She finally stopped honking and got out of her car. She was demanding he'd do his job and give her some gas. He gave her a thumbs up, smiling friendly at her. She huffed, saying something about how some people are just so stupid, then got back into her car. This station has big red signs with white lettering that reads, "Self-service." There's no gas attendants here to pump anyone's gas. My cousin, grinning from ear to ear, walks right up to her car window, turned his back to her, and let out a loud, "Fromp." Yes, he farted right there, saying, "There's your gas, lady." I got into the truck, and he got into the passenger seat. Both of us just drove off. I could see her in the rearview window. She was out of her car and just hunched over. Don't know if she was gagging or... My cousin had some truly vile gas. I told my cousin I posted this story, and he told me what I did not see beforehand. After he had finished pumping gas in my truck, she honked to get his attention. When we went to ask what she wanted, she had told him to put premium in. He had told her twice that he doesn't work for the gas station. When he was walking away from her car, that's when she started blaring the car horn. Entitled father tries to kick me out of university. My freshman year, I was roommates with a guy who had fairly well-off parents. Let's call him John. John was a child actor, and although he isn't one you'd recognize immediately, he's played side characters on big sitcoms and did some voice acting on some pretty popular shows. His parents hold him to very high expectations and were very strict with him and his acting. So when he got into our university, which is considered a top 10 university globally, his parents held him to that same standard, which for a now liberated young adult with almost no maturity, he did the exact opposite of everything he should have done. He slept all day, partied all night, never studied, didn't go to class, etc. Yet, when his parents would call him to check up on him, I would always be mentioned in the conversations. They needed to make sure that I was a good influence on their son. They would consistently ask if I was partying often or bringing girls over. Pretty much everything he was doing. They wanted to ensure that I wasn't doing it to keep their son safe. This goes on for months. Whenever his parents would call him during his midday nap and I'd be in between classes, I'd always hear him defending me to his parents, and he'd go beet red whenever I'd walk in and hear what they were saying about me over the phone. So I'd leave and wait until his call ended, since I knew he already felt embarrassed enough. I didn't really think of what they were saying either. I just thought it was ironic and told John afterwards that he didn't need to apologize since they weren't his thoughts. Around the end of the semester, John is told by his major department that he would likely flunk out of college if he did not ace the final exams in at least 2 of 4 of his classes, and that he would have to retake the other 2 regardless of how he did. Moreover, that he would lose a scholarship that paid a substantial amount of his tuition. He had to call his dad to tell him the bad news while I was on the top bunk of the bed studying, and his father is shouting so loud that I can hear him through John's phone with my earbuds in. Eventually, the question is asked if I had anything to do with John's bad grades, and before John can say anything, his dad determines that John was covering for me because I was a bad influence, and that since I was around him all the time, I was the reason he failed. He demanded to speak to me and wanted me to tell him everything I did to his son and how I corrupted him. And when John said that I didn't do anything, it only made him angrier. And after telling me that I would pay, he hung up. He already knew my name and of course where I lived, but I didn't think he would do anything with that information until I got a call from the university's Student Affairs Center telling me that John's father had requested access to my personal information through the student portal, basically a website with financial aid and enrollment info, and to change my passwords in case I thought that my data was at risk. I tell John that his dad tried to access my info, and of course he called his dad to ask him what the heck he was doing. Dad said that because John was failing, he was pulling John out of college and that he was coming in a few days to talk to me about my part in all of this. John asks him again why he asked the school for my info, and John's dad just hung up on him. I couldn't focus on all this at the time since I had my own exams to prep for. But as he said he would, he showed up as this fairly skinny, balding guy desperately trying to cover up his receding hairline by brushing up as much stringy blonde hair of his to the front of his head. I came down with the flu right before exams, so sadly I was forced to be in the room while John moved out, with his dad berating the both of us while I have my earbuds in and feel like I'm going to puke. John looks like he's going to cry because he doesn't want to leave, and I peek over my laptop to see his dad putting books and notes in the garbage and repeatedly asking John if he officially withdrew from the university until John just barked yes at him. John's dad then turns to me and says something along the lines of, "All right, now you." Again, I insist that I didn't do anything to John except live with him, and the dad demanded that because I turned his kid from an accomplished actor to a college dropout, I should withdraw from the university too. John is now yelling at his dad to leave me alone, and I'm telling him that there's no way I'm dropping out for his ego. He demands my laptop and portal login info, and I tell him that if he even so much as touches my laptop or me, I'm calling the police. This escalates to a straight-up shouting match among the 3 of us until the RA knocks on the door, warning us that if we don't quiet down, he will get campus security to come up and settle the issue. The dad quiets himself again and calmly asks me to withdraw again because it's only fair. I say no because again, I didn't do anything. There's a silence in the room as he approaches the edge of my bunk and he's glaring at me. I'm putting my earbuds in because chemistry won't study itself, and he asks again, gripping the railing and almost hissing the question. I say no, again, didn't do anything. He finally decides that I'm not worth talking to anymore and says that he'll tell my parents everything I did and that they would make me leave college if he couldn't. And with that, he left with John. I got a text from my dad about a day later, and that both he and my mom basically told him and his wife to buzz off and never contact me again in far more eloquent terms. I then got a barrage of emails and texts and Facebook posts from the parents pretty much saying that I was at fault for ruining their son's life and that I don't deserve that seat at my university. So I blocked them. Every now and then, my parents would get Facebook messages or emails. They were ignored. John angry reacted my graduation pics on Facebook a few months ago. So out of paranoia that they were spying on me through his account, I blocked him too. I hope he understands. Professor Karen complained I wasn't looking at her during lectures, so I started doing it a lot. There are those teachers who don't like you for no particular reason. I had one at college, and to this day, I have no idea what made her dislike me and pick on me whenever she fancied. It first started when I didn't raise my hand higher for her while she was noting down attendance. She deliberately marked my attendance entry as tardy, ignoring my protest. She made snobby remarks on my works, even though other teachers thought it works perfectly fine. One day, she asked a question in class, and I answered incorrectly. She called me a pathetic idiot who chose to be in class for the attendance and not for the lecture. I was either interested in my book or out the window while she was teaching and couldn't even bother to look at her. She didn't stop there. She went bad-mouthing my sister, whom she taught before, saying how she failed her class and that I turned out to be brainless just like her. That was when I knew she crossed the line and she had to pay for it. I'm not a person who can confront others very well. The head of the department was on her side due to her charms, so I couldn't do much about it. Yeah, she could be a jerk to students, but act like an angel around authority if she wanted. I didn't want to waste my time fighting with her because it was my last year at the college and I just wanted to get out of there. So for the remaining semester, I took the seat right in front of the class during her lectures. I can't control what she thinks about my sister, but I could prove to her that I was looking at her, so I did it very intensely. I stared at her all through the class with an angry expression without breaking eye contact, which wasn't hard for me because that's all that I felt for her. It made her uncomfortable and she lost her track at times. The students knew what was happening, but they didn't stop me. One of them said she looked scared at one point. I continued doing this while she wrote notes on the board and explained them from the back of the class where I couldn't turn around to stare at her. I thought of sitting at the back of the class so she wouldn't be able to hide from me. But I cut her some slack because I was doing the same outside the class, like in the cafeteria in the parking lot. Eventually, she stopped picking on me, and to my surprise, I scored well above average for the finals on her paper. I was a legend for some time in her class until another boy told her off after she started picking on him. His reaction made her cry and run out of the classroom. He took my spotlight till the graduation. Edit. People asked in the comments, what did the boy do to make the professor cry? I took the liberty of contacting one of my friends who was there when it happened. Mind you, this happened 6 years ago, so she doesn't exactly remember what he said to her, but it was something personal. Like me, he didn't answer her questions during a lecture and she targeted him ever since. She was bothering him while he was taking notes in the class. You see, this dude isn't a patient person like I am. He won't take BS from anyone, so he stood up and the rest is history. Have you ever had a teacher pick on you? And if so, what did you do about it? Please let us know.
I would have asked to speak with her manager.
Do teachers have managers?
I don't care that your mom is hurt. You need to get your priorities straight. So this happened about a year or so ago, but I was reminded about it earlier today while speaking to my old boss on Facebook. So here are the people involved. We've got me, of course. We've got Dan, my old boss, name changed, of course. And we've got Karen, his boss, again, name changed. I used to work as the residential manager of a house for people with special needs. I had previously worked in direct care and managed a house with a different agency, but moved to this new agency for a variety of different reasons. I've always worked in this field, I still do, and I consider it my calling. It's very difficult work managing the house, as not only do you have to remember everything about each of the residents, referred to as the guys, but you also have to set the staffing schedule. Now, according to Karen, I had been hired to fix this house up. For a bit of background on the house, it had only been open for about a year, and the guys had just met when they moved in, so they didn't know each other very well and were constantly making each other angry. Most staff members weren't sure how to work with them due to the lack of training and lack of understanding of their unique personalities, so they just kind of let the guys do whatever they wanted. Beyond that, there was no accountability. For example, there was a house credit card that was to be used for food and another to be used for items like soap and cleaners. There was no way to keep track of purchases because staff hadn't been trained on how to sign the cards in and out, how to store receipts, and what to do with the card logs. Needless to say, the house was a mess from a managerial standpoint when I got there, and they had gone through 6 managers in the 1 year they had been open. As soon as I took the position, I began learning everything I could about the guys, from parents, all documentation, and contacts with their previous staff, while training my staff on what I had learned. I also set concrete processes of documenting money spent, med administration, and training logs, because yes, Karen hadn't instituted any training logs, so there was no proof that training had even happened. All of this work helped the house a lot, and this set us up in a good place, but it came at the price of almost all of my free time. Between all of the work I put in setting up systems in the house and all of the forced overtime I had to work, I ended up working between 70 and 100 hours every week, without any overtime pay. Karen said that she would be there to step in if Dan and I needed something, but never once helped. This is important. Now, all of that was basically just to say that I put in work for that job. Here's where Karen comes in. I want to start by saying that Karen is beautiful, like really beautiful. So beautiful, in fact, that her boyfriend in corporate just had to give her a director's position as soon as they started dating. That's a different story though. Anyway, Karen had a habit of flirting and making it very obvious that she was doing so. She would drop things on the ground while speaking to me and then bend down slowly in front of me to pick it up. I never complained, but it did seem a bit unprofessional. At first, I thought that she was being overly friendly. Then I realized that she was hitting on me and using it to get me to do more work around the job. I'm used to that kind of thing happening in this field, but Karen is by far the worst offender. It kind of came to a head one day when she made a comment about bigger guys being her type. Being a bigger guy, I kind of picked up on it, and I made a comment about the girl I had just started dating at the time. She laughed it off and said that there was no title involved in my relationship, so she didn't care. But I said that I did. She backed off, but she was never really friendly with me again. Things started to go downhill once she realized that she couldn't control me like that, which was fine with me. Things were calm and the house was running smoothly, with normal hiccups, but fate likes to strike at the worst times. I got a call from my mom basically as soon as I got to work one day at like 8 a.m. saying that she had tripped over my ridiculously hyper dog and fell, and she was having a hard time breathing. I called Karen to tell her I was leaving, and then I rushed home. You'd think that someone would respond with empathy, but I was met with a cold, "You'd better be back later today." Okay, whatever. She's probably having a bad morning. I take my mom to the walk-in orthopedic clinic about a half hour away, and after a 2-hour wait, they finally saw her and ordered x-rays. Problem is that they don't do x-rays on site, so we had to go to another orthopedic clinic to get them done in red. I called Karen on the way to the second clinic and filled her in. She told me that I had work to do and that I'd better get back as soon as I could. After another half-hour-long drive and another 2 hours waiting for the x-rays to be done, we sit and wait for them to call us back in to have them read. This is where it goes south. Karen calls me and I run outside to take the call. Here's an approximation of the conversation. Karen: "Where the heck are you?" Me: "I'm at the doctor with my mom, waiting for x-rays to be..." Karen cuts me off. "You said you would be quick." Me: "I had no idea it would take this long. Save it. You're probably just trying to get a free day off. You really have to get your priorities straight. You have no idea how lazy you look." Me, yelling now: "So, I work 90-hour weeks and I'm lazy? I fix the mess you allowed to build up and can't take my mother to the doctor for an emergency without being yelled at?" Karen: "Don't you..." Me, cutting her off. "No, I think you're right. I have to prioritize. Consider this my 2-week notice." "But I..." Click. I was shaking, but it felt great. She wanted me to prioritize, so I did. The job was suddenly much less important to me. I then found out that my mom had cracked her sternum and bruised a rib. Less great. In speaking with Dan about the situation recently, I found out some fun things. My replacement has no idea what they're doing. They have no idea how to relate to the guys, and the staff doesn't respect them at all. My replacement's incompetence cost Dan his job. All of the work I had done to set up the systems for money management and medication administration was just tossed because replacement didn't want to keep up with it. So everything is back to the way it was before I got there. Half of the staff left, and the new staff have no idea what they're doing because there is, once again, no training for them. It's gratifying to know that the work I was doing was so necessary, but I do feel bad about the guys and think about them often. Edit. Thanks for all the comments, everyone. A lot of you are concerned about the guys and say I should report the situation. I've mentioned on a few comments that I reported everything when I first got to that job and that I'm going to report what I know now because it's just not right or legal. Thanks for all the kind words and support. Have you ever quit a job that you just couldn't stand? If so, how did it go? Please let us know. How could I quit a job when I've never had one? Am I the jerk for helping my friend's little brother get a date, knowing that my friend has had zero luck with the ladies? I, 19 female, have a friend, George, 20 male, who has a little brother, Callum, 15 male. George is my friend, but he's also the guy that compliments random girls in ways he shouldn't and then gets mad when they're upset. Getting him to understand that that's why he struggles with dating is like talking to a brick wall. Instead of listening to me, he's fallen down a couple of internet rabbit holes. It's a bad cycle since they only make his behavior worse. It's really affecting his mental health. He stopped taking care of himself. He doesn't put effort into his studying anymore, and he lost his job. He's been a less nice person to talk to these past few months. Callum, on the other hand, is a very sweet kid. Before lockdown, he had a crush on a girl in his class, so he drew her something, he does art, and bought a bunch of flowers. George told Callum that he was going to get rejected doing that BS, and it was hopeless anyway, yada yada. Callum wouldn't listen to him, so George called me up and asked me to tell Callum that the girl he was into was way out of his league and that it was hopeless. I told George to buzz off and Callum to go for it and that any girl would be lucky to have him. Anyway, he got rejected. George has been on my case ever since, saying that I've put him through humiliation that I didn't have to and that it's really hurt his confidence. I think it would be far worse for Callum's confidence to tell him that there's no point in trying. We had a big argument over it. By yesterday, it had blown over, so I went around to George's for a socially distanced gathering. Callum was doing his schoolwork at the table, so we talked a bit about everything. He confessed that he liked a different girl, but was embarrassed to ask her since he had been rejected before, and also because George, being a jerk, apparently gave him a really hard time about it. I told him again to try, but this time I did remind him gently beforehand that it was possible to do everything right and still have the girl not be into you. Anyway, this time there was no need. He and the girl had a Zoom date, eating their dinners together and touring a virtual gallery. Cute, right? George has been having a massive tantrum at me ever since. I should not have got involved after the first time. It's creepy for me to set them up, etc., etc. I told George that it was pathetic of him to be jealous of his little brother. Cue another series of messages. According to friends, I shouldn't have hurt George's pride even more because he's going through a tough time and should have left Callum alone. I think that it's crappy that George has managed to convince a 15-year-old that being nice to girls is hopeless and that Callum needed a positive influence. Reddit, am I the jerk? Edit. Thanks, Reddit, both for validating me and for making me question my relationship with George. I've been thinking about ending my friendship with him for a while, so I think once I've cooled down, I'll send him a message. I'm not sure if I want to cut contact completely, but I think I'm going to need him to change as a person to interact with him. I didn't realize how draining he was and how much his view of women affects me until I thought seriously about cutting him off. Am I the jerk for telling my brother's girlfriend to get rid of the nose ring? I, 29 male, live in a fairly affluent part of a city, and I work for a more traditional firm. Admittedly, they are a little behind the times in terms of dress code. They still require full business attire unless you're in your cube/office. I made a lot of friends working there, and I've adapted to their style and customs. Now, my brother and his girlfriend are in the process of moving, but due to unfortunate circumstances, they have no place to live at for the month. Since my brother is a genuinely good guy, I offered to let him and his girlfriend stay in a spare room at my apartment for the time being. His girlfriend, on the other hand, I think is completely trashy, and we don't get along too well. But we get along enough that I could tolerate being around her for a month. The issue is that since last time I saw her, she got a few piercings, dyed a strip of her hair, and got a nose ring. The piercings and hair I could stomach, but the nose ring is out of line. The reason for this is that if I take my brother out on trips near us, his girlfriend wants to come, and I constantly see coworkers and bosses. This paints a negative picture of me, and they start associating me with someone with the likes of her, and that could be damaging. I took her aside and told her that if she's going to stay with me rent-free, could she at least remove her nose ring? She got upset and told my brother what I said. We got into an argument and are now giving each other the silent treatment. I don't ask much from them. I'm letting them stay out of the goodness of my heart until they can move into their own place. All I wanted was for her to remove a nose ring, and apparently it's such a big deal. I am baffled. Am I actually being a jerk about this? And yes, I tried to find ways to get alone time with my brother so we can hang out by ourselves, but his girlfriend always finds a way to tag along. Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk or not? Please let us know. Bruh. I speak English. Backstory. I'm an Asian female in her 40s who was adopted at birth by white people in the US. In short, I don't speak any East Asian languages, but in the last decade or so, I've been trying to get in touch with my roots, and I often visit East Asian supermarkets. We've got me, we've got Crazy Lady 1, Crazy Lady 2, and the employee. I was shopping at an Asian supermarket and staring at the fish and meat section of the supermarket. If you've never been to an Asian supermarket, they usually have a huge fish and meat section. I go there to get some food and watch a show as they butcher, steam, fillet, and get into grand discussions with the customers. I had my basket and was leaning against a display of big cans while watching the amazing fishmongers debone a mega-sized fish when I saw a couple of not Asian women staring at me. I figured they wanted what I was leaning on. Me. Sorry, do you need these? Crazy Lady 1.
Do you speak English?
I might add that my first words to them were in English. My mind just stalled for a few seconds, and that was enough for the second lady to start chiming in, doing that "if I speak louder, they'll understand me better" thing. Crazy Lady 2.
I know how to talk to them. Ni hao. Can you help us?
Me. I don't work here, but what do you need?
We want shrimp chips.
Me. Okay, I know where those are. Right over in the second area through the doorway. I point towards the area. Crazy Ladies 1 and 2 had apparently decided I didn't understand English, so they started talking about me in front of me. Crazy Lady 2.
What a jerk. She's not going to even show us where they are, is she?
Crazy Lady 1.
What can you expect from those types? She's lazy. Didn't you see her just standing there doing nothing?
At this point, my brain finished its error check and reboot cycle, and I got upset. Me. Excuse me, I don't even work here, and you come up and start yelling at me? The women looked at me like I grew another head. Crazy Lady 1.
Well, how should we know? You all look like you work here.
Karen 2.
At least learn English.
I don't know what the look was on my face, but I started to walk towards them with crazy intent, and they turned around to book out of the grocery store. The employees, who had all stopped along with the customers to watch, began to clap. Not loud claps, but they all watched the women and clapped. Karens 1 and 2 ran out of the store. 1 second later, it was like someone hit play and everything just went back to how it was before. Am I the jerk for letting my family think my husband and I are poor? My parents have, for a long time, seen me as sort of the mess up in the family. They love me, but it's clear they pity me. Even when I'm excelling in my career, it's clear that they don't see a difference between an executive chef and a barista at Starbucks. A few months ago, there was an issue where my sister tried to say my inheritance should just go to her because we weren't going to have kids, which wasn't true. We were waiting to save up and buy a house before we have kids, and she has 2 now that need the money. The whole family took her side, and when I explained how she had had her tuition covered, plus 4 different cars, 2 houses, plus a new roof for the second one, all paid for by our parents, and on top of that, she's got $72,000 in debt just from her shopping habit, she didn't need the money, she needed a financial advisor. My parents backed off. I found out later, a big part of why she relented was because she started telling people my husband and I are dirt poor and needed that money. I let my whole family keep believing that for the most part, since we are saving and it's better than them thinking we're better off and expecting extravagant gifts from us all the time. We live in a shoebox apartment to save money. We mostly only use my car and carpool when we need to travel for work. We're pretty set though, and now my husband got a promotion that will help us more. The issue is that my mom just moved to our state. I'm in North Carolina with my sister, and my dad lives out of state. My mother just moved here last Saturday, and she discovered pretty quickly that we're nowhere near as destitute as my sister made us out to be. And now it's spreading through the grapevine that we started that rumor to get handouts and leave my sister without. We literally never asked for money, just like we never said we were about to be homeless or that we couldn't afford to eat. This was all part of my sister's concoction. Sure, I didn't refute it, but that's also because the only real rumor that I had heard was that we were having a tough time and needed my inheritance, which was true enough. I do feel bad that my mother was worried, apparently sick over me. But given that she treated my miscarriage in April as something I did to her and left me without a support system, it's hard for me to feel too much guilt about this. Am I the jerk here? Or do I just come from a family of drama queens? Edit for info. The inheritance comes from my adoptive great-grandparents, not either of my parents as they are very much still alive. She left equal amounts for my siblings, cousins, and myself. My uncle named all of his kids after him so he could take their inheritances, which, yes, is illegal. That's a separate thing being handled differently. My sister managed to get my other siblings' inheritance when he passed away. When she tried to get her hands on mine, she initially told our dad that I said it was okay because it was being held for me in an account of my father's, as I didn't want to be tempted. He told her he needed to hear it straight from me, and when I told him I had no idea what she was talking about and that I was obviously not okay with it, she made it seem like I had told her it was fine. No, and that she had been counting on that I'd basically done her over by going back on what I said. Also, as mentioned in the comments, someone said I should post it here for context. She only started bringing this up a week after my miscarriage, citing that I was just never going to have kids. While we did want to wait and the pregnancy was not planned, it was no less very much wanted and heartbreaking. She knew how upset I was, and I suspect she thought I would be too beaten down to refute her. That was when I went no contact with her. The reason I left the inheritance information so vague was because that part of this saga is, in my opinion, irrelevant. I already know she's a terrible person. I don't need others telling me she's the jerk there. My question here is purely about whether or not I'm the jerk for not clarifying my financial status, and I've gotten conflicting answers. Most comments tell me I was right not to disclose my finances, that if my family really cared, they would have reached out, as opposed to continuing to spread rumors. But there's a good chunk of you who think I'm the jerk for not telling them the rumors weren't true. I don't know if I'm the jerk or not, honestly, but I agree that I should have reached out, and I don't think it's my job to get involved with that drama just to clarify. If they're inclined to believe that stuff about me without bothering to hear my side of things, are they really family? I'm not sure. Anyway, hope this cleared some stuff up. Am I the jerk for refusing to move in with my pregnant sister who expects me to be the live-in help? I'm 23, female, and my pregnant sister, who's 30, wants me to move in with her. She vaguely told me I'd be helping around, which I took to mean running the errands or keeping the house in order, especially once she's further along in the pregnancy. Realizing now that she actually expects me to help deal with her creepy/manipulative in-laws, cook meals for her on short notice, run impromptu errands, and do the cleaning. She's only in her first trimester right now. So earlier today, she asked me to clean the bathroom extra well. I had done so 2 days prior, but thought okay, cleaning it again won't hurt. Did it, then went back to my room. She comes in and asks me if I can get dressed to go buy her some chips from the store, since she hadn't had lunch and was hungry. I told her chips probably weren't the best thing to eat on an empty stomach, but that there was some fresh bread/butter/cheese downstairs. She quietly leaves my room and I think nothing of it. A few minutes later, I head downstairs to make myself a drink and see her making herself a cheese sandwich. I said, "You'll feel much better having that instead of junk food." She turns to me with a sour expression on her face and says, "Would you have gone to the store for me if I said I wanted an apple?" I paused for a moment, thinking, what a strange question. I asked, "For one singular apple?" She said yes. Then I said no. Of course, if the weekly shopping needed to be done, I'd assumed she'd list the things she wanted and I'd get it, no problem. But I think expecting someone to run errands for random singular items she wants on a whim is just ridiculous. I get that pregnancy cravings are a thing, but I don't want to become her live-in servant. She's only 3 months pregnant right now too. She expected me to make her a potato omelet from scratch at like 10 p.m. a few weeks ago. She brought that up again during our exchange and said I was selfish for not caring for someone pregnant. I told her she should tell me if these things are her expectations if I want to live with her, because if it is, I'd rather not. I expect my enabling family to say I lack empathy, but I honestly don't see how this is reasonable to expect off anybody. Edit. Some people seem confused and think I'm already living with her. I'm not. She came back to our main family home, where the above events went down, to tie up some things, /pack some old clothes she left behind, etc. We were supposed to leave together for her apartment this Friday. I agreed to live with her initially when I was told I'd be helping around, shopping, bulk of cleaning, etc. when her pregnancy gets tough. She's 3 months along and already expects me to cook her impromptu meals and drop everything I'm doing to go get her snacks as soon as she wants them. That's what this post is about. Well, what do you think? Should OP move in with her sister or not? Please let us know. Karen tries to get me fired over free pickles. So, some of you might know that I used to work at a certain fast food restaurant, and just like every other customer service rep, have dealt with my fair share of entitled people and their kids. Though the kids usually weren't entitled or bratty, and overall just sweet, normal kids, having to deal with their bratty parents. Coming into work every day felt like walking through tall grass and a wild Karen could always appear. I've got a treasure chest full of stories, but this one is by far my favorite. On normal days, I was usually made to work in the drive-thru window, handing out bags of food instead of taking orders, mostly because I was garbage at trying to take orders since I couldn't hear all that well with all the background noise. Good morning, here's your burger and fries with a Coke. Have a good day. And today was no different. It's halfway through the lunch hours when Karen's order pops up on my screen. 5 double cheeseburger meals with extra pickles and a couple Cokes. I don't think too hard about it. Get her drinks ready and wait for her to roll up so I can just hand her order off and wait for the next customer. Karen rolls up, her hair as messy as the car she drove and a cigarette in her hand. She's got 2 girls sitting in the back of her car, texting on their phones and paying me no mind. Me. Hi, did you order the 5 double cheeseburgers? Karen nods her head and responds in her deep southern drawl.
Yes, with extra pickles.
Me. Yes, ma'am, here's your order, and you have a good day. Karen just sneers and rolls her eyes at me as she takes the food and speeds off. And I think that's the end of our interaction. Boy, was I wrong. Not 5 minutes later, I hear a banging on the window, and I turn around to see Karen, red in the face, and her 2 daughters looking pitifully up at me, aware of what's about to happen next. She goes off the second I open my window.
Excuse me, but I said I wanted extra pickles on my cheeseburger. And look how many I got.
She basically crawls out of the driver's side window to shove that burger into my hands, showing not 2, but 4 pickles on the pitifully made sandwich. Oh, the humanity. On a quick side note, we don't upcharge for any extra pickles that they request for our cheaper menu options, so these are still free pickles she's got on her sandwich.
I have my receipt. You charged me for these extra pickles, and I only get 4 on each burger. I want my order remade.
Me, shaking, because I do not like confrontation. Okay, ma'am, I'll talk to my manager and try to get your order remade for you. I close my window and take the rejected cheeseburger to my manager, who's standing 4 feet away from me, thinking I've resolved the issue. Apparently not. I hear something hit the window, followed shortly by tires screeching as this woman hits the gas and pulls into a parking space in front of the store, slamming her car doors. I kid you not, someone's kid started screaming and wailing as this woman storms into the restaurant, her face red with the fury she was about to unleash. My manager shoos me back to the window before I can get caught up in the crossfire. Karen.
Hello?
Manager. Yes, ma'am. Is there an issue?
Yes, there's an issue.
She points a finger at me.
That jerk charged me for extra pickles, and I only get the same amount of pickles. They put the same amount of pickles they made on any other burger.
Manager. Ma'am, you ordered the double cheeseburger. We normally make these with 2 pickles instead of 4. And we didn't upcharge you for any extra.
Well, I wanted more pickles.
I'm so sorry about the inconvenience, ma'am. We'll remake your order free of charge.
What about her?
She points at me again. What about her?
I want her fired for being so rude and inconsiderate. This is not good customer service.
Manager. Oh, I'm sorry. How was she rude?
She took my burger from me.
Me cutting in. Ma'am, you handed me your burger, so I just took it so I could get it fixed.
Well, I didn't want the old burgers fixed. I wanted to get a whole new order to make up for this one being messed up.
Manager. I'm sorry about this, ma'am. Can we have your old bag of food? We'll just throw it out and make your order from scratch.
No, I just want my new, correct order.
This goes on for a few minutes, with my manager trying to be as calm as she can be while this woman just goes back and forth with her. If I had to make a guess, she was just trying to pilfer extra food from them. One of her daughters, who came in the store with her, tried to get Karen to calm down and leave, obviously having dealt with this sort of thing before. I start ignoring her and go back to handing out food. The woman in the car behind Karen pulled up and started apologizing for her behavior. Apparently, when I turned around, Karen had gotten upset and lobbed a couple of the burgers at the window, screaming and yelling. The lady in the car behind her was appalled and, before she screeched off, threw one of her old drinks at Karen's car. She was so sweet compared to the screeching banshee behind me. As the story goes, Karen eventually breaks down and hands her rejected order back to the manager, gets her order remade with 8 pickles per sandwich, and leaves in a huff with her daughter apologizing behind her as they leave. Do this next. Tap here on your screen to come see our new podcast playlist, where you'll find thousands of hours of the best stories you've ever heard.
Or tap the one on the right. That episode is specifically just for you, based on other videos you've enjoyed the most.